Hello YouTube, this is me, Audiobook is Live. I'd like to thank you guys for supporting me and liking and subbing to my channel. Now, check out my Patreon. For $7 you have access to all my novels. Yes, my novels, your 9 ones, you name it. Everything. Now then, you guys probably seen I'm doing premieres. Is that good for you guys or no? Do leave that in the comments in the video so I know if I should do more premieres or not. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys see me post on my new Discord channel. Do join my Discord channel so I can, because I have some new ideas for some new channel ideas. So do go there, and also you can request novels there for anything you like. Also, do leave a like and support. Now back to the video. Have a good day.
Chaotic Craftsman worships the cube, by ProbablyATurnip. Summoned after an unfortunate accident in hopes they could protect the world from a coming threat, Ben and his classmates are gifted another chance at life. With fame and fortune promised to whoever is willing to fight for the sake of the world, it doesn't seem like a bad deal. There's just one small problem. Ben wasn't blessed with any magic or combat skills, just crafting and enchanting. While the skills themselves aren't useless, they also aren't seen as being necessary to the coming war. Now not needed and alone, Ben tries to find a place in the world while meeting some of its colorful characters along the way. Does anyone have an extra pen? Is now really the time for this, Ben? His classmate asked in exhaustion. I mean, if we're going to die anyway, I really want to finish this drawing. Ben, don't go talking like that. You're just going to stress everyone even more. People are aware of where we are, there'll be help in no time. Scolded his teacher. Okay, my bad, sorry. But it would really help me with passing the time until that does happen, so does anyone have a pen I can borrow for the time being? Mine's out of ink. One of his classmates tossed one to him, and he gave them a friendly nod. He set himself up, holding his phone above his sketchpad with his non-dominant hand to get some light, and got to work trying to distract himself from the day and his feelings of impending doom. After months of working together to save money, doing bake sales and raffles, hosting events and putting on some shows, his class had earned enough to fly down to Mexico for their senior trip. A final hurrah before graduation and moving on to college or work or whatever the future held. It was supposed to be a week-long trip with votes taken for what event they would do each day, and here they were on the second day in, where the more athletic kids had banded together to vote for some cave exploration, enjoy the natural beauty and the hike out to get there. Even if Ben was far from athletic himself, he had to admit it was very pretty, something he wouldn't have minded taking the time to draw or paint later, at least until an earthquake hit and the cave's entrance collapsed with the class and their tour guide trapped inside. Now this was a little memory that wasn't going onto a canvas. So he sat down and ignored the conversations around him, instead focusing on his work to pass the time, losing himself in the task. He was currently working on a parkscape by his neighborhood. It was somewhere he would go out to draw on plenty of different occasions, but it was only recently he realized he didn't have any drawings of the park itself, despite it being one of his favorite spots. Sure, maybe it would have made more sense to start it when he got home, but when he made his realization he was already on the plane, and he needed to kill some time anyway, so why not? He wasn't sure how long he had been at it, he could never tell how much time had passed when he got into his work, when he felt a light tapping on his shoulder. Looking up he saw Steph, a girl he was friends with, looking back at him. Hey, we were all just talking about what we were going to be doing when we get home and graduate. What about you, Ben? Going to spend your days making anything crazy? Everything I make is super normal, I'll have you know. She didn't say anything, but the look in her eyes spoke volumes. They had taken a few art classes together, and not everything he made was super normal, as he said, or for that matter particularly easy to look at. Even the teacher of the class, a true lover of symbolism in work, was a bit taken aback once by his sculpture representing the theme he had been given of despair. Feeling the judgment under her gaze, he quickly broke and answered her question. If you mean my immediate plans, I've been working on a piece of cosplay for a con I have tickets for. Making chainmail is a long-ass process though. In the more distant future it will be working for a year and then maybe art school if I can get accepted. Wait, go back a bit. A guy named John called out. Why are you making your own chainmail? Couldn't you just buy some or make something that resembles it, or just go in a different costume? That sounds like a huge pain in the ass. He gave his head a little scratch and thought about how to answer. I mean, isn't it just more satisfying to make it yourself? It just feels more rewarding, you know? Everyone went back to their discussion and he went back to his work, only stopping to eat with the others and plug a portable charger into his phone. More hours passed, but he eventually finished his work and looked on at what he created. Not bad, not bad. Line work is a little sloppy in places, but this isn't exactly peak drawing conditions, and I really captured the feeling of a lazy summer afternoon if I do say so myself. Yep, this will certainly do. Feeling pretty good about how it turned out, he turned to show it off to one of his classmates, only to find that everyone else had gone to sleep, or was at least trying to. Looking at his nearly dead phone and seeing the time, he decided to take some time to pass out himself, hoping that things would seem more optimistic in the morning. Things were not better in the morning. Well, that wasn't strictly true. When he woke up, he thought the situation had improved in an unbelievable way until he got to learn about it. What the hell do you mean I'm dead? He found himself lying in a bed in a well-lit room. The curtains of a window were wide open, letting in a healthy amount of natural light. The room itself was plain, with no decorations to speak of, just the bed, a chair in the corner, and the woman sitting in it. You aren't dead currently, you just died to get here, she said, seeming a bit out of her own depths. I'm sorry, I know this must be a bit of a shock to you, but the gods brought your companions' souls here and rebuilt your bodies for you so you may live again and help this world. He looked at the woman before him, a girl maybe only a couple years older than himself. She had piercing blue eyes and was wearing long green robes, reminiscent of what a priest might wear, with brown hair mostly covered by her hat. Taking in what she said, he composed himself and responded, "Yeah, so I'm not going to believe that. Are my classmates around?" She gave a sigh before continuing on with her explanation. "Don't worry, you'll be reunited with them after I finish with my explanation. My name is Leahy. I have been assigned as your caretaker for the duration of your time here. We were informed that in the world you're from the gods take a rather hands-off approach, but watch and I'll prove this isn't the world you know." With some drama she threw her hand out in front of her, and from nowhere a ball of water was suspended in the air above it, then as if directed by her will it flew around the room. "What do you think of that?" she asked with a smile. "I'm told you don't have magic in your world, this should be plenty of proof." "Cool trick. I'd love to get you for my little brother's birthday, doesn't mean it's magic," he calmly said, enjoying the little show nonetheless. Her smile cracked when she heard his calm rebuke and continued, "What do you mean trick? Surely you can see this is magic. How else could I be doing this?" "I'm not sure, but isn't that the fun of magic tricks? Knowing how they're done kind of ruins the mystery." "Has anyone ever told you you're too stubborn?" she said, putting her head in her hands. "I mean, frankly, I would be worried about the mental health of anyone who believed what you were saying with just that," he told her, taking his attention away from the now puddle of water that was the ball, and bringing it back to her, only for his attention to be captured immediately. He got out of bed and walked over to her, wanting to confirm what he was seeing for himself. Leahy saw him approach and was still trying to figure out where to go from there when he made his move. "Hey, what are you? Where do you think you're touching?" Ben ignored her though, too preoccupied with his thoughts as he was gently grasping and prodded what had fallen out of her outfit, specifically a pointed ear, about 15 centimeters in length. "Doesn't look or feel like a prosthetic, it's warm and fleshy too, could it just be a birth defect?" he muttered to himself. For her part, Leahy relaxed once she realized what was going on, though not without commenting on the inappropriateness of touching an old woman's ears like that. She had been selected as one of the other worlders' caretakers partly for her appearance, specifically how closely she resembled a human, so as to not frighten them, but it seems like the small difference that could be seen between their two species was enough to help convince him. After a little while longer of his examination and mutterings, he sat back on his bed. "Are you at least convinced now?" she asked, embarrassment plain on her face. "Let's at least say I'm open to listen. So you're an elf? Based on what I've been told, you only have one intelligent species on your planet, so that must be the language filter. Strictly speaking, I am not what you would call an elf because I'm not some creature of myth from your planet, but when the gods brought the people to this refuge, they created a universal language for it. The fact that you're able to name my species would mean that we fit the qualifications to be called that by your standards." "Wait, what do you mean language filter? Listen to yourself. Since you woke up you've been speaking the same language I have since I greeted you instead of your native tongue, haven't you?" He thought back to all he had heard and said and was immediately shocked, all the more so for not even realizing he had been using a completely foreign language this whole time instead of his English. "I feel like it would have saved us both a lot of time if you pointed out at the beginning that I've had a brand new language downloaded into my brain. That's neither here nor there, what matters is you believe me now, don't you?" He had been right about the active skills and passive skills, but blessed skills were apparently something special that the world itself provided anyone who was born, or in his case summoned, there. As a skill's power increased, it would eventually evolve into the advanced form of the skill, but while in some cases that evolution would also produce a second bonus skill. Like if water magic evolved into high water magic, it may also result in an additional skill such as water breathing. In the case of blessed skills, that would always happen, and on top of that the blessed skill would be around 50% more powerful than its unblessed version. If that's the case, can you take a look at my stats and let me know how I compare? Of course, she said, finally happy that things were progressing. It was as soon as she started reading it that her expression took another negative turn. That doesn't seem good. I'm sure it's good for priests to be honest, but that doesn't mean you should keep your feelings on your sleeves all the time. He joked to lighten the mood. Surprised, she looked up and tried to explain herself. Wait, I wasn't. There's nothing wrong, sorry. She took a breath and collected herself. To give an honest assessment, your status is just unbalanced is all. While your mana recovery rate is well above average, your affinities for magic are the worst I've ever seen. Usually you would have at least 1 in the 20s at worst. On the other hand, your resistances are all unusually high. Neither of these things are bad, they could be perfectly fine if you were a fighter of some sort, but the world grants blessed skills based on what you have the best aptitude for. Yours are skills for craftsman, and to get enchanting as a skill when you probably won't be able to learn any magic is just unusual, although I'm not too well versed in how it works myself, so maybe it will have its uses. As for the attributes, yours are about average. You would expect an average hominid type around your age to be in the 100 to 150 range, so while your intelligence is above average and your stamina is shockingly good, your strength and agility are both lacking. He sat and listened to what she had to say, and it didn't sound great, especially that it didn't seem like he could use magic, but there was nothing he could do about it. All he could do was try and live in this world with the hand he was dealt and figure things out as he went. Okay, well, it is what it is. Can you tell me about my blessed skills then? Sure, but I may not be too much help unfortunately. Like I said, for enchanting, as far as I know, it's pretty reliant on adding magic effects you possess to items, but I think you can do it for skills too. Your biggest problem right now is that you only have your blessed skills, so there isn't too much you would be able to do with it at the moment. Crafting is what it sounds like, the process of making something with a physical item being the final result. This means that it covers other things like blacksmithing, alchemy, masonry, and probably some others I'm not aware of. The main flaw is that it's a jack of all trades, master of none type skill. While you will be able to use all of the abilities of various other crafting skills, it will take longer to level up, and let's say you and a blacksmith were to make the same item while at the same level. It would be expected that the blacksmith's item would be better because they would be more specialized. Finally, for focus, it's a skill that improves your concentration when working on something, helping you to ignore distractions. Ben listened to her explanation carefully and couldn't help but grimace. None of this really sounds good. I have no magic potential, a broad but weak crafting skill, the ability to pay attention, and more or less average aptitudes. All I have going for me are my resistances, and I don't have much to do with them. Is that about right? You're right, but don't give up. Your stats are average now for someone your age, but most people would be on their second or third job by now. You still have room to grow. After dinner I'll take you to the library and you can read up more on your skills before bed so you can get a better idea of what you can do with them. Okay, works for me then. Something to read sounds like it would be nice either way. Excellent, and there's only one last thing we need to talk about. Oh God, what now? You don't need to treat everything I say like bad news, you know, she said with a pout. Okay, sorry. What is it? Tomorrow you will be meeting the representatives of various nations or gods as they make you their offers for training under them and fighting in their specific forces. The following day you'll leave with whatever nation agrees to take you. That kind of feels like bad news. It will be fine. Pretty quick though, considering we just got here. It's literally the world at stake. Now come on, let's get you some dinner. I got something called Solar Flames and Spear User. I got Earth Master, Air Manipulator, and Shield Techniques. I got Lightning Magic. You only got one skill? That sucks. Nah, it looks like it's a type of magic you can typically only get if you manage to evolve air, water, and light magic at the same time, so I'll be able to use all those on top of lightning spells. Oh hell, that's pretty cool. When Ben arrived at dinner everyone else had already gathered. It looked like he was delayed from spending so long verifying that this was another world, and they were already discussing the skills and abilities they had received. It seemed like a few were still pretty down to learn that they had died and there was no going back home, but many were at least ignoring that fact for now with the excitement of the situation. He took a seat between Steph and his pal Will and chatted with them as a priest brought him a plate to eat. "How is it?" he asked them, looking at the unusual purple mush beside some far too yellow-looking meat. "Not poison," Will was quick to say. "It's not bad. The taste is a little weird, but who knows what it came from, so I guess we'll just have to get used to these sorts of meals from now on," Steph said a little sadly. Now that there was food in front of him, he was feeling pretty hungry and wanted to dig in, but the looks of it still made him cautious, so he started with a small bite. Steph was right, a little weird, but overall not bad. The meat was slightly spicy and the texture was unusual, but he could stomach it. The purple mush with it sort of made him think of berries mixed with mashed potatoes, but not in a bad way. It had a mellow sweetness to it. As he was working his way through his plate, Will popped the question that he was dreading. The question everyone else seemed to be talking about. "So what skills did you get?" "I ended up getting Unarmed Master, Tough Skin, and Advanced Enhanced Strength, probably because I do some boxing. And I got Spatial Master, Time Controller, and High Life Magic." Steph chipped in. "I got Crafting, Enchanting, and Focus." "That suits you to AT. Those skills are super on the ball with you." "Thanks guys, but the priest who was talking to me didn't seem very positive about them at all, not to mention my other stats apparently suck." "Well, how bad could it be?" Will asked, so Ben pulled out his card to show them both. "Oof, okay, that's pretty bad." "Well, don't be so negative, let me see. Oh, well, your resistances are incredible at least." "Yeah, and that stamina is great too, mine's only 400. "Thanks for the encouragement guys, but I've already been told I'm far from great. Unneeded skills, pretty average attributes, and from what Leahy said, the worst affinities she has ever seen. I'll just have to see how tomorrow goes." He then asked to see their cards, thinking that he might as well see how far he falls in comparison after all. They both looked a bit sheepish at the request, but they gave him their cards to take a look at. With the exception of his stamina, they dwarfed him in all of his other attributes with values over 1000, not to mention that they also had high magic affinities. Even Will, without any blessed magic skills, could probably learn magic in a pinch if he felt like it. They also already had some passive and active skills, probably because they had higher forms of their blessed skills automatically. They were definitely the sort of people this world was hoping for when they were brought here. He gave a long sigh and was about to give them back when one thing caught his eye. "All of your skills are at level 0? Yeah, it looks like you at least got lucky with having one level automatically in a couple of yours. From what I was told, the skills go from 0 to 9, and if you meet the conditions will evolve at level 10 into a new level 0 skill." Steph explained to him. "Well, even if I'm not needed, at least I can probably enjoy crafting to an extent." "Don't be so down. I was told they were looking for strong fighters, but even if your skills aren't for combat, that doesn't mean you won't be of any use. Don't let it get to you." "Yeah, don't worry, my skills aren't really combat-oriented either, but I was told they should be useful for healing and helping supply troops. I'm sure they could use someone who could do things like make tools or weapons." With the motivation of his friends, his mood started to improve a bit. Sure, his stats weren't exactly incredible, but there must be some way to use them. He would just have to wait and see how tomorrow would go. After dinner, Leahy led him to a small library at the back of the church. It really gave him a sense of scale for the place as they made his way there. It was large. Ridiculously so. With every wall lined with statues and paintings of different figures, some humanoid, some he would be more inclined to consider monsters. "What are all these?" "Representations of the various gods." "What? We must have passed a few hundred." "Yes, and there are a few thousand total. Why would one world possibly need so many gods?" he asked curiously, a development Leahy seemed pleased with. "Good question, it all goes back to the founding of the world," Leahy said, starting her story. "It seemed that this world didn't start out with thousands of gods, and hundreds of races to go with them, but it happened as a result of circumstance. The threat they had been brought to fight was an ancient one, destroying and conquering hundreds of worlds over the millennia. The gods of those worlds gathered whatever survivors they could and brought them to this faraway land, to rebuild with other races whose worlds have been ravaged. In that time the gods joined forces to help strengthen all the residents of this world, and worked together to create the status system. A means for them to grow stronger and for their work to yield greater efforts, also that when invaders came for their current home they would be ready. Wait, and that's what we're here for? To fight against a force that had destroyed countless worlds, you guys summoned 20-something heroes? Well, other locations summoned other heroes from other worlds, but from what I understand reaching beyond the edge of one universe into another is a difficult task. There shouldn't be more than 200 summoned heroes from various worlds who had been brought to different communal churches throughout the land. Still 200 isn't a lot. How long until these invaders come? The various prophet gods are in some disagreement on the matter, but the general consensus is between 3 and 20 years. Well, I guess I'll hope for 20 then. Hope for 20 but plan for 3. She told him with a gentle smile. Anyway, here we are. You should have no trouble understanding the written systems of this world thanks to your skill, but if you have any issues I'll be in the corner reading myself to pass the time. Now let's find you something about your skills. She took a moment to look amongst the shelves that lined the wall, looking at books and scrolls before pulling out a 3 to give to him. Here we go, books on skills. The first volume is Common Skills, with information on how to acquire them and level them up, as well as information on what you can do with them. The second is a book on the higher variants of skills. The first book should include some of the names of what different skills can evolve into, so use that to find what you're looking for in the second book. The final one is on rare skills, ones that are either hard to get or the method to acquire it is not certain. Just remember that these books don't cover everything. I would be surprised if they have even a tenth of all known skills, but they're a start. Ben thanked her and then dug into his pile, reading everything that seemed relevant at first before just trying to find whatever seemed interesting or useful. He was thankfully able to learn more about enchanting, finding out that he could attach not just his skills, but also his aptitudes and resistances to items as well. Although how powerful he could make something was dependent on his skill level. Crafting for its part listed all of the known disciplines that fell into it, as well as how learning the best way to level it up was apparently to use it in such a way that it would train multiple of its sub-abilities at once. That made sense to him. If you challenge yourself you make greater progress. Focus was the odd one out. He didn't see it when he was flipping through the first book looking for it and didn't find it until he made his way through the book of rare skills. Apparently it wasn't clear on what one would have to do to develop the skill itself, as plenty of professionals would spend hours of each day focusing on their work, only to never get it. On the plus side, once it was acquired it isn't too hard to level. The method seems to be just doing work that requires focus is all. With that done he made a mental note to see if the library had any books more specialized in enchanting when he had time and continued to flip through the books around him, trying to make a list of any skills he may want to try and acquire later. The biggest issue was how cool so many of them sounded until he read the conditions to acquire them. Magic was out automatically, while it was technically possible for him to get certain rare magic skills if he improved his attributes. All of them advised not even trying for affinities ones unless he had an aptitude of at least 20 in the skill he wanted to learn, otherwise it would be all but impossible to acquire. Even ignoring those though he still didn't have the best options just based on how his attributes worked out. His high intelligence and mana regeneration made him a candidate for an okay mage, but again there was the issue of his affinities as well as low mana. His strength and agility made it clear that even if he could use combat skills he wouldn't be very good at them, and other skills he just didn't meet the requirements of completing certain tasks for. In the end he was only able to find 2 that he wanted to try and acquire. Dismantling was something that could be gained by stripping monsters for parts. It required some practice and training, but it shouldn't be too hard, plus it looked like different monster materials could be used as crafting items. It would certainly help him with any future work he may get. As for the other one, well it may be useful as an enchantment to put on items, but he would leave it for later. He was about to flip through the book again to try and find more when he felt 2 hands firmly placed on his shoulders. Ben, I'm sure this is all very interesting to you and helpful for deciding how you want to study and grow, but you've been reading without moving for 5 hours now. There's one more thing we need to do, then get some rest before the representatives arrive tomorrow. The strength in her grip left no room for arguments and Ben briefly wondered if she had been there with him the entire time before she dragged him off, through the halls and corridor before they came to a brightly illuminated room bathed in moonlight from a skylight above, as well as the glow of a crystal within. This is the job change rooms you'll find in any church or town. Ours is a little more grand than a usual one, but the function is the same. Go place your hands on the crystal and select one of the available jobs that show up in your mind. Not feeling the need to test the safety of everything anymore, he did as he was told and placed his hands on the crystal, feeling a strange warmth filling him up. He closed his eyes, excited to see whatever options would present themselves to him. Available jobs. Apprentice craftsman. Yeah, that tracks. With no other jobs available to him, he selected apprentice craftsman in his mind. Acquired job apprentice craftsman LV0. Bonuses granted to improving strength, stamina, and intelligence. All crafting-related skills will receive a growth bonus. What the hell was that? He yelled out, surprised to suddenly have a thundering voice yelling in his mind. Leahy tried to hide a small giggle as she explained. That was the system itself explaining the benefits of your new job. Getting a job improves attributes and skills related to it, making it an invaluable resource to improving yourself. So what did you pick? Apprentice craftsman. Seeing a small grimace appear on her face, he quickly explained. I only had the one option. Does that mean I'm stuck with this forever or what? No, you can change your new job at any time. The only thing is, if you don't get it up to level 99, you won't be able to take any advanced version of the job in the future, nor will you be able to keep the skill and attribute bonus after you complete it. How long should it take me to complete then? If you work hard on using skills related to the job, it shouldn't take that long, especially since it uses your blessed skills. It should only take about a year. That feels like a long time to me? Oh? Is your race particularly short-lived? I mean, if I'm very lucky, I may manage a century. Then you're fine. With that sort of lifespan, you could reasonably expect to get 5 or 6 jobs in your time. They will take longer the more advanced they are. Well, when she put it that way, a year wasn't too bad at all. He would have to just start using his skills and get crafting. Hopefully whoever ended up grabbing him would put him to work under a decent teacher. With that done for the day, Leahy led him back to his room so he could get some rest before meeting the representatives of various nations. Looks like nobody's coming, Ben said, giving Leahy a self-deprecating smile, while she for her part only looked more and more uncomfortable as the hours passed. When she came to wake him up this morning, she gave him a rundown for the day. First, she took down the information from his card for each of the representatives to inspect, after which they would take an hour or so to decide who exactly to approach and what offers they would make. Everyone was to stay in their rooms with their caretakers as they heard out each offer, and afterwards they could go out and discuss where they thought they were going to go with everyone else, in the hopes that they would each choose what would be right for them instead of getting swept away by what any of the more charismatic students picked. I'm going to be honest here, your offers probably won't be as good as your classmates, unfortunately. Just try and keep your expectations in moderation. When she told him that he hadn't been bothered by her words, it was already clear his skills weren't as incredible as what he had heard from the rest during dinner, but he originally hadn't cared too much. As long as he could find stable work to keep himself alive, that should be enough. But here he was a few hours into the interviews, having finished a book on magic with a section on enchanting Leahy had managed to find for him earlier to help pass the first part of the day, and his prospects were looking grim. Don't be so negative, she told him, trying to force some cheer into her voice. There's just a lot of students they probably want to look at first. Someone will come. He tried to give her a more genuine smile than before and went to reread a few passages of his book that caught his eye. As he was trying to understand a few of the trickier concepts in it, he heard a knock on the door. I told you someone would come, she said, getting up and hurrying to the door. For his part, he was ready to accept whoever it was and whatever they were offering, but his hopes were quickly dashed. Leahy pulled open the door to greet the representative that should have been behind it, but her face froze at the priest who was there instead. All of the representatives are done with their discussions. It's fine to come out and talk to the others about where you are considering now. That can't be right, she protested. Nobody has talked to Ben yet. Clearly not expecting this, the priest was flustered, looking back and forth between Ben and Leahy, stammering out he was sorry, but everyone had already made their offers. It's all right, don't worry about it, Ben told them. It's sad, but it's not exactly shocking, is it? It is not all right, Leahy yelled back at him, looking like she may cry from the situation. Just wait here, I'm going to talk to the head priest. She rushed out of the room with the other priest in tow, and he did as he was told, trying to get back into his book to pass the time while he waited but just couldn't get into it. Instead, he ended up laying down in his bed, staring at the ceiling. It's not like this is shocking. I knew from the moment Leahy first saw my status that things weren't looking good, but not even one person? Not a single one of the dozens of representatives out there thought they would have a use for me? It was too much. Tossed into this world and apparently unwanted, it was better than being dead on Earth, but it still hurt. He thought back to Earth and home for a bit. How were his parents doing? His brother? His friends who either didn't go on the trip or were in another class seeing other sights? It had only been a day. At most they would be considered missing now. There was a good chance nobody even knew he died. He felt himself sinking into a depressive spiral when luckily Leahy came back with someone he hadn't met yet, who looked like what he could describe as a one-eyed lizard man. Hello Ben, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Father Yen. He said, introducing himself with an elegant bow. Leahy has appraised me of your situation. It's unfortunate, but we can't compel a nation to take you, nor should we. Wouldn't want you to suffer any unreasonable treatment as a result. We can however let you stay at the church for as long as you like, until you are ready to venture into the world yourself. Of course we will also provide you with the funds promised if you had chosen to leave instead of helping. It may not feel like much after what these few days have brought you, but it should be of some help. Of course if you want to talk to your classmates, dinner will be served soon, you can always discuss your options with them. Thank you, I'll try to give it some proper thought. It was nice to hear he wasn't being tossed into the wilds immediately, but he was still feeling disparaged. The thought of seeing his classmates made him feel even more uncomfortable right now, talking to everyone who apparently had worth that he couldn't offer, but he needed to at least tell his friends what was going on, and for that matter find out what they would be doing themselves. Working up his willpower he got out of bed and left to get some food. What do you mean you didn't get an offer? Steph yelled as soon as he explained what happened to her and Will. He was glad she cared enough to be outraged and all, but now all of his classmates were looking at him with faces of shock, confusion, and pity as they started to mutter amongst themselves. Wait, he didn't get an offer? I thought I heard him say his skills weren't great yesterday, but just how bad are they? Isn't that too sad? Feel like he maybe didn't want to have everyone aware of that, Steph. Will reprimanded her. So what will you do? He'll come with me. I got plenty of the representatives offering to accommodate me however they could, getting you to come shouldn't be that hard. She told them, trying to ignore the looks she caused to sprout up everywhere. Thanks, but I'm going to pass on that. I think being baggage will actually be worse than sticking out here on my own. Besides, the church offered to let me stay here until I figure out what I want to do, and they'll even provide me with some money when I do. It won't be so bad. But you'll be alone. Well then you guys will just have to visit me when you get some breaks. Steph still didn't seem happy about any of that, and Will was at a loss as to what to do as well. Eventually they just had to accept his choice, even if they didn't like it at all. Things had quieted down around the table as they were talking. People couldn't help but be curious about his situation, but eventually it all picked up again as he focused on his meal. They all talked about their offers and what each representative would provide or where they would be going, some of them having abilities so impressive or important that nations actually decided to share them, just to ensure they would get the best training they could. He only got snippets of conversation as he tried to focus on his food, but it was enough to make him want to crawl into bed again and just hide from the world for a while. The next day he woke up to see everyone off. It felt far too quick to him. They only got their offers yesterday. But it was literally the world at stake. Every second wasted deciding was time spent that could be used for training and improving their skills. Not to mention that there was nothing really holding them back. They came to this place without any possessions. All they had right now was each other. His friends told him where they would be training and made him promise that if things got too bad he would come to them, and a few others he was acquainted with put out the offer as well, just in case he needed it. Everyone shared a teary, heartfelt goodbye, promising to visit when they could, and went off their separate ways. Ben for his part went back to bed. He laid there for 2 days, ignoring Leahy as she came to check on him and just getting up to eat the meals she left him. On the 3rd day when he woke up there was only one thought on his mind. God, this is boring. Even if he was still depressed he couldn't wallow in it any longer, he needed something to occupy his mind. Looking out the window he could see the sun had just barely risen, so he decided to find Leahy to plan out what to do for now. When he left he immediately realized he was faced with a problem already. She always came to him, he never found her. This changed his first task to finding someone else that could help, and after searching around fruitlessly for a few minutes he came across a passing priest, who was thankfully able to give him directions to her room. After a little walk he was able to give a knock on her door. "Coming," she yelled, throwing it open a few seconds later. "Ben, you're finally up. Are you in better spirits now?" she asked, grabbing his arm and giving it a friendly squeeze. "At least better enough to figure out what to do now," he told her, doing his best to focus on her face instead of the fact that she was wearing some rather cute frilly pajamas instead of her usual robes. "Well, me and Father Yen have been working on that while you pulled yourself together. He should already be in his office. Let's go discuss it together and see what he thinks." She was already dragging him off before he could reply. "Sure, but maybe you should change first." Stopping in her tracks she took a quick look down at herself, gave a small squeak, and ran back to her room. "My caretaker's a bit of an airhead, huh? A few minutes after that minor detour they were in Father Yan's office, discussing where to go from here. Unfortunately we don't have many ways we could truly help you develop your blessed skills, so the best course of action would be to find a suitable teacher when you feel ready to venture into the world. Of course there is also the option of staying here permanently, joining as a monk or priest of the church and offering your faith to help strengthen the gods. Thanks for the offer Yen, but I don't really feel like I have much faith to give. What do you think I should do while I'm here? If that's the case then the plan we had discussed would involve using this time to learn. Li-He is already working on preparing you lessons about the world, but other than that I was told you had already reviewed some books on skills. If there were any you wanted to try acquiring we would be more than happy to accommodate you in any way you can. In that case there's actually 2 I saw that sounded worth getting if you guys can help. I was looking at dismantling and stealth. Yen stroked his chin in thought. I understand the use of dismantling for your blessed skills, but why stealth? On paper, because it would be something I could hopefully use for enchanting since magic isn't an option. In practice it just sounds really cool. It briefly looked like Yen was unhinging his jaw as a clicking sound came from his throat. Ben was unsure what was happening for a minute before understanding that he was laughing. Yes, wonderful. There really is no better reason to learn something than an interest in the subject. We have both hunters and butchers among our priests, so it should be easy enough to find you a teacher for both skills. I'll get on it right away. In the meantime Li-He can begin her lessons for you in the library. Feeling the conversation was done Ben got up to go, but Yen stopped him. One last thing, how are you at waking up in the mornings? Not terrible I guess. Why? I was thinking of having you help out with preparing meals throughout the day if you would be interested. Yeah I guess I should do something to earn my keep, I can help. But Yen shook his head at Ben's response. This isn't about earning your keep Ben. I looked into your crafting skill a bit the other day myself. Cooking should fall under it as a skill that produces an item or product, so it should be able to provide a bit of experience to leveling it up. It would also just be good practice to learn how to use ingredients you aren't familiar with here. They really had put thought into how to make his time with them as useful as possible. Ben couldn't help but be a little touched they were doing so much. He thanked them both as sincerely as he could before going off with Li-He to begin his lessons. The month that followed dragged on at first. Ben tried his best to throw himself into his lessons, using focus to its full potential so as to try and keep him from any negative feelings, and in doing so lead him to his biggest breakthrough in accepting his new environment. In the middle of one particularly boring lesson with Li-He, where he was learning about the different kingdoms and city-states in the world and how they would interact, he had been doing everything in his power to keep paying attention, despite just how dry and dull it all was. It was when he was sure he was going to fall asleep from the boringness of it all that he heard it. Focus level increased. Suddenly the world was clear again, his energy restored. He felt at that moment that he could sit down and listen to an explanation on the trade relationship between the Scylla and Woolran for hours. Li-He could tell something had changed just by looking at him and asked what happened. My focus skill just leveled up. It's incredible, everything seems so bright and I feel like I could study all day. As he spoke he saw her smile take on a scary edge. Oh, that's wonderful. Say you know skills improve by repeatedly using them and pushing them to their max potential, don't you? You aren't telling me that my lessons are so boring that you leveled up, are you? Not with all the time I put into putting these together for you. Oh crap, I'm in danger. No, of course not. He told her, trying to think on his feet. I was devoting my full attention to what you were teaching, trying to do my best to learn, that must have caused it. Really? That's wonderful. She beamed. Safe. He thought, mentally pumping his fist. In that case I'll prepare a test for you tomorrow, we really should see how well you're taking this all in. Crap. The next few months he continued his new routine with significantly more enthusiasm, cooking meals with the priests, having lessons with Li-He, trying and eventually succeeding in getting the 0th level in the 2 skills he desired, and time spent in both the library and working on his art for some fun. Someone from his old world once said time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time, and the statement should apply to his last 4 months, but he needed to move on. Having a solid basis for his knowledge on the world now, he wanted to use the skills the world saw fit to give him and see what they could be good for. Are you sure you're ready to leave? Li-He asked for the 7th time, worry etched into her face. The world isn't the safest, you know, there's danger around every corner, it wouldn't hurt to stay a little longer. If I stay any longer I may never leave. He said, giving her a smile. I will always be grateful for everything you've both done for me. Just remember you can come back anytime Ben, you're always welcome here. Now before you head off give me your card. Father Yen told him, taking it and tapping his own against it. There we go, as promised the money you were offered. I spoke to the other churches and they agreed you should be allowed a bit extra given your circumstances, so as long as you're careful with it you should be able to survive on that alone for at least 6 months. Ben didn't know what to say, they had done so much for him already. As long as he could find work he would have no problem surviving in the world thanks to all the help he had received. As he was struggling to find the words Lee pulled him into a hug and Yen gave him a powerful handshake. Best of luck to you Ben, may our paths cross again. Make sure you write to us every now and then so we know how you're doing, and make sure to stay safe. It would be a waste for you to die after all the time I spent on teaching you. Will do, thanks for everything. With goodbyes said and done it was finally time to depart. The sun was setting and the nearest town was about a week's walk away, but Yen had been kind enough to arrange a ride for him with one of the merchants that would come up to deliver supplies every couple weeks. No matter how comfortable he had gotten in the last few months he still hadn't left the church, and there were plenty of dangerous beasts that could be found in the wood between it and the city. Walking by himself was out of the question. He spent some time talking to the merchant, some sort of bird person by the name of Tai, who was happy to talk at length about his passion for the footwear the various races of the world would use, before he decided to curl up in the back and get some sleep. Ben, Bean. He thought he heard someone calling out to him, but he did his best to ignore it, he was too comfortable to want to open his eyes. Wake you up, it continued on in a sing-song voice, trying to get his attention still. This carried on for some long agonizing minutes while he was just trying to rest, and it started to take on a more desperate-sounding edge, before stopping altogether. Finally, he thought to himself, drifting back deeper into sleep. Wake up kid, came a scream from beside his ear. Ga what? He yelled back bolting upright, only to find he had no idea where he was. Last he remembered he had been sleeping in a carriage, waiting to get to the town but now he was in an endless grayish-blue void. He was standing on something, but there was no visible ground beneath him, no distinct boundary on the horizon to separate earth and sky. Not seeing anyone he turned around, trying to find the voice that was calling out to him, only to be caught completely off guard by finding a silver cube, maybe the size of a car, floating ominously above him. Well that's not concerning at all, he muttered to himself, before calling out. Hello? Is there anyone out here? Ah Ben, finally awake are you? I have to say it's pretty surprising to see someone so determined to stay asleep inside of their own dream. The voice called out to him. He looked around but still didn't see anyone. Hey, do you think you could show yourself, then we can talk? Of course, I'm right here above you. You're in the cube? He asked, looking back up at it. I am the cube. Of fucking course you are. He muttered under his breath, still not used to the bizarreness of this world. In that case who are you? And where am I? Straight to the point huh, well the name's Myriad, and I brought you here. He stopped for dramatic effect and the sounds of a drum roll filled the space. To offer you the position as my believer. He yelled, the entire backdrop behind him exploding into fireworks. I decline. The fireworks and drums immediately cut off, creating a sudden and uncomfortable silence. Wait. Don't decide so soon on your own, at least hear me out. I mean from what I heard in the church about divine realms and the fact that you're asking for me to be your believer, you must be some sort of god, right? Showing up in my dream and asking me to be your believer is just too sketchy. Ben knew this world was filled to the brim with gods, some would say too many, but from what he learned in the church they weren't allowed to try to talk you into being their followers, that was up to their oracles, priests, and apostles. Wait, you have that a little bit wrong. We aren't allowed to actively try and steal the believers of other gods, but you have no faith, contacting you is fair game. So this thing can read my mind, great. He wasn't wrong though, Ben didn't worship any gods in this world. Both Lee and Yen tried to talk him into finding one who suited him. You didn't need to be one of the races that came to this world with a particular god, and they were known to occasionally bless their believers with skills and knowledge, but Ben just lacked interest. It's not that he didn't see the value in it, and he had plenty of options recommended to him that may be a good fit, but it felt like the gods just tossed him into the world without any thought. He only survived through the kindness of people. That wasn't even to mention how suspicious it was that a god would want him as a worshipper of all people. Okay, I can't help the mind reading though, it's not really something a god can turn off, but I have all sorts of handy advice for you, I'm super helpful. And coming on really strong, why does such a shady god want little old me so bad then? It can't just be the fact that you're allowed to try and recruit me. Damn it kid, has anyone ever told you you're merciless? Alright, I don't have any worshippers so I'm slowly losing power, even just one worshipper would be able to make a big difference for me compared to where I'm currently at. That actually captured Ben's interest. Why don't you have any worshippers? Did your original race turn against you or something? No, they're all just dead. So how do I get out of here? Do I just have to make myself wake up or something? Wait. Hear me out. I mean, back at the church I was warned that there were gods here that ran off and left all their people to die. Didn't think I would get to meet one though. Maybe if I just think awake thoughts. That's not what happened. My connection to my race was just a bit unique among the gods is all. When they would die they'd become a part of me, and they knew it. Rather than just escape with a few and leave the rest, and letting the invaders take our world, they opted for a slightly different strategy. Oh, what did they do? He asked, his interest caught again despite himself. They elected to destroy the world and have all of their souls merge with me. My race may be dead, but at the same time you are also talking to the sum total of them. If what it said was true, that was definitely unique as far as gods went. He may not have known a ton about them, but he did get some education on the topic, and he had never heard anything like that before. Leaving aside the mentality of any people and God that could decide to use a scorched earth strategy with their entire planet, he decided it would at least be interesting to hear what it had to say. Okay then, and what are you offering in exchange for my worship? Love and affection. Ben turned around and started to walk away. Surely there would be an exit somewhere for him. That was a joke. A joke. Right now I can only give you information, but after I've been worshipped for a while I should be able to grant you a skill. Just give me a chance. The offer of a skill was hard to pass up. No matter how long you would worship a god, it wasn't guaranteed you would get one in your life unless you got their attention, either through actions or devotion. Of course, since he was already at the center of this particular god's attention, that didn't seem to be a problem. And what information can I get from you to make this worth my while? You don't have to sound so hard done by. I'm not asking for too much, a prayer or two a day. Tell people how great I am so they want to worship. Wait, stop trying to leave, I'll get to the point. By the time you wake up you'll have arrived at the town of Stonewall at around a few hours after sunrise. You're looking for a master to teach you how to use your crafting and enchantment, right? There's maybe 8 or 9 places you could train under for only focusing on one of your skills, and 4 if you want to focus on both. Of those 4 you want to go to Fox's shop and convince him to take you on as an apprentice. It will be worth your while, I swear. Why him? Because he's the best you're going to find without a few weeks or maybe even months of travels. Ben thought he heard Myriad click his tongue, but did he even have a tongue? Before he continued. Looks like we're out of time. If you agree with my advice, once you see him make sure to throw me a prayer. We can talk again then. As he said those final words the world faded away, and Ben woke up to sunlight falling onto his face. After passing through the stone gate of the town and saying his goodbyes to the merchant, the first thing Ben did was not find Falk, but instead look into the other 13ish places that he might apprentice under. Just because Falk came recommended by a god didn't mean that he wouldn't decide for himself at the end of the day. First things being first, he spent a few hours walking around the town, trying to get acquainted with the area, while also stopping at an inn to book himself a week so he would have somewhere to sleep while deciding on whether or not to stay in this town. Making a list of any potential places he might look into as he went, he checked out 2 smiths, an apothecary, 3 restaurants, and what looked like an art studio, but found them all lacking. It hadn't even seemed worth his time to ask the owners if they would take any students or staff at the moment. It all just looked boring. Even worse though was he only found those 7 locations. He had no clue what the rest were that the god mentioned, nor had he found Falk's. He figured that he should at least check that one out. He would just have to ask around for directions. Since he realized he didn't actually know what Falk's shop did other than that it could be a place to train both of his skills, he barely knew what to ask for help with. But acting under the assumption that someone who could use both of those skills would be either an apothecary or a smith, he started asking the various warriors and adventurers around for directs. It wasn't long before he was able to find out the way. Take your item and don't you dare come back. This was the first thing Ben heard as he approached the shop, followed quickly by a man being thrown out of the shop and rolling down the street. Okay, well that's probably good enough. Sorry Myriad, but I'm not in the mood to be killed twice this year. That display was already enough to give him serious second thoughts about going in. Still nothing else looked promising at the moment, so he gathered his resolve. Hopefully as long as he was polite he could get out with only minor injuries. He took a deep breath, gathered his will, and walked inside. You'd think the first thing he would notice would be the shop's wares, but no, the first thing that caught his eye was the shopkeeper himself. At 8 feet tall, covered in white fur and rippling muscles, and having a surprisingly impressive topknot on his head, there was only one word that came to mind for him. Yeti. During his walk around the city he had gotten to see all sorts of different races than at the church, some falling farther outside of his frame of reference than this man did, but that didn't change how impressive it was to see a creature that would be considered a thing of legend back on Earth. A tiny voice in the back of his mind said that Leahy would also qualify for that distinction, but he just couldn't make himself think of her as something so impressive. "You need something, Brat?" The creature, presumably Falk, asked him. "Just wanted to take a look around, maybe see for myself what's available." "Suit yourself," he said and went back to work at a forge in the back of his shop. Ben for his part took some time to look around. It looked like he was a blacksmith, and a busy one at that. There may not have been any other customers in the store at the moment, but the walls were covered with items of various styles and designs, lining the walls and filling crates on the floor. Every single item he saw was immediately catching his attention. Maybe it was a function of his crafting skill, but he could tell right away that everything he was seeing stood above the other shops by a mile. When he considered that, it actually seemed strange that he wasn't constantly sold out, but maybe his rough attitude had been keeping some more faint-hearted customers away. Aside from just being higher quality, though, there was something else that he couldn't put his finger on about a few of the items, something that made them stand out compared to the others. He stared so hard it felt like he was trying to see through them, searching for what secrets they kept, but in the end there was only one way to really know. "Hey, you're Falk, right? What's it to you, Brat? I was just recommended this store and I was just curious if I'm talking to the owner or one of his apprentices." "Alright, I am Falk, now what do you want?" Ben pointed out 4 items that had caught his eye in particular. "Something about these ones seem different from the rest to me. I was just wondering if it was in my head or if they're unique in some way." While Falk seemed indifferent, if not a little rude, at first, he suddenly switched to openly hostile. "You got an appraisal skill or something, Brat?" stepping forward and baring his teeth at him. "Looks like my chances of escaping with only minor injuries have just dropped significantly." Still, if he had gotten on his bad side from a misunderstanding of his skills, then maybe telling the truth would help. "No appraisal skill on me, it's probably because I have crafting and enchantment, I would guess." He seemed to relax a bit at that, but was still on guard. "In that case, what do you want with a back alley store like this? This is it, now or never. I was told if I wanted to become a good craftsman I would need a teacher, and you were recommended to me. If you can tell just by looking at them that there's something different about those 4, then you should be a decently high level. Why would you need a teacher at this point? I'm only level 1 in both crafting and enchanting though. Brat, do you think you'll have any luck with such a bad lie? There's no way you can tell that with just level 1, not to mention having crafting instead of something like blacksmithing." "It's true though," Ben told him, showing him his status card. "Crafting and enchanting as blessed skills, huh? I guess that might do it. But what's with these magics and resistances?" He quietly spoke to himself while looking at his card before looking back up at him. "And why would you show me such a pathetic status when you're asking to become somebody's apprentice, Brat? It usually isn't recommended someone become an enchanter without a blessed magic skill to use for items, and from the looks of it I doubt you would be able to use magic to begin with. I have been told that it's probably not possible for me to use magic, but consider me showing this a point of my sincerity. I wouldn't hide anything from the person I would have as my teacher." He knew after looking around that Myriad had been right. This was definitely the store that Ben had to be working at if he wanted the best results he could get. All that was left was convincing his would-be teacher. "Find somewhere else, I don't take apprentices, and even if I did, you'd never make it as one. Don't decide that before you give me a chance. I swear I'll live up to whatever standards you set if you give me a shot. Brat, you don't even know what you're getting yourself into." Aside from just making things, craftsmen need to be able to gather their own materials when they start if they aren't working for a kingdom or have some sort of patron. "Gods know I couldn't supply you with everything you'd need while you start your training. That means hunting for it yourself. Look at you, your stats are average at best with no magic or combat. Give up." "I won't," he said, staring him in the eye and standing his ground. "All I'm asking for is one opportunity to prove myself. Just one." Falk matched his stare before sighing and massaging his brow. "Tell you what, kid, go get yourself killed hunting an Amarok wolf. If you can do it by yourself without hiring any adventurers, then I'll take you on, but if you can't even manage that, then give up." Ben broke into a smile and quickly grabbed Falk's hand, giving it a shake. "Works for me, Falk. Just wait, in a few days you're going to have the best student you could hope for." With that he ran off, eager to figure out what he would need to do to get it done. Dumb Brat doesn't even know what an Amarok is. Well, if he has any brains he'll quit when he finds out. After running off, Ben went to find something to eat before returning to his inn to turn in for the night. Deciding that Myriad had indeed proven to have some worth, he gave a quick prayer of gratitude before drifting off to sleep. I know I was the one to recommend Falk and said to convince him, but please give up here. Before he knew it, he was in the god's realm again, staring at a much smaller Myriad, maybe around the size of a small TV, as he tried to change Ben's mind. So can you just appear whenever you want? Seems pretty handy, Ben said, ignoring the god's plea. Ben, he gave you a task you could never reasonably be expected to accomplish. Well, yeah, obviously. Wait, you knew? Then why did you agree? He clearly didn't want to take me in, and if I kept pushing I probably would have gotten something even harder assigned, if he didn't just kick me out of the store. Honestly, I was lucky he offered a task at all. But it doesn't matter if you die. If I really think I'll die, then I won't do it, but that's not what matters. What matters is if Falk is a man of his word. Myriad let out a long sigh. Did he even have anything like lungs? Before he continued. He should be. You saw that little altercation at his store before you walked in, right? He still gave that man his item before kicking him out. He's rough, but he should be a man of character. Wait, were you watching me all day? Yeah, I got to see you spend hours checking out all the places I already told you weren't worth your time. Ben gave him an uncaring shrug. Trust but verify. Well, not much trust yet, but if you keep up the good work we'll get there. Actually, where were the other places you said weren't worth my time? I only found 7? You're not going to waste time checking those out too, are you? If things don't work out with Falk, I may as well. Another long sigh. A few others were enchanters that work independently of other stores, so you could bring items from a regular smith to them in order to enchant. Then the Adventurers Guild has someone you could work under for conducting minor repairs on either armor and weapons, although that wouldn't give you too much experience as a craftsman. There's also a private stonemason in town that would probably be more useful than those folks at the Adventurers Guild. He has a high skill level too, but he's too specialized. You may be able to grow to level 4 in crafting under him, but after that you would just need to find a new teacher again or do some serious self-study. Well, maybe he would be worth looking into later then. For now, what do you know about Amarok wolves? I can tell you they're notorious newbie adventurer killers. If you go to the guild you could probably find more out, but they'll definitely try to stop you. Well, just let me figure that out. While it's a guild policy to accept anyone who has the will, I personally can't in good conscience let you join without trying to talk you out of it. The guild receptionist told him with a look he wanted to call pitying, though it was hard as they didn't strictly have anything that could be described as a face. After his talk with Myriad, Ben woke up feeling well rested and ready to take on the day. He sent up a quick prayer of thanks and then headed straight to the guild. He needed to register to get the information he wanted, but it was going about as well as he expected it would when it came time to show his skills. Don't worry, as you can see I'm just a prospective craftsman in town trying to find a teacher. I just figured that while I was doing that I could do some gathering quests to make some money, and take a look at the guild archive to see what materials are in the area that I could collect or buy. He confidently mixed truths with lies. The archive was definitely his main goal when coming here, but he would be taking a more active role in gathering what he needed. Well, if that's all then I suppose it should be fine. With the skills you possess I can only make you a rank 7 adventurer anyway, so you can't accept any harder quests. Just don't venture too far into the woods, you never know what's going to be out there. She took his card and added a new mark to it, symbolizing his adventure rank, and let him go on his way. The first thing he did was head to the archive. He had been told it should have all of the information he would need on monsters that could be found in the area, so he grabbed any books that looked like they could be relevant and sat down to get reading. It was pretty interesting to learn more about the creatures that inhabit the world. There were beautiful rainbow colors, pterodactyl-like creatures that would soar through the skies, a subterranean kingdom of mole people that would take in the few other sentient underground races to accept as family, fairies that were each attuned to a specific element of magic, having subtle effects on any land they stayed in for too long. It really was a land of beauty and wonder if he was open to seeing it. On the other end of the spectrum was the Amarok wolf, a real bastard of a beast. It was a large black wolf, about 2 to 3 meters in length, that was particularly known for preying on anyone foolish enough to be hunting alone at night. It would take its time toying with its prey, making it think it had a chance to escape before finally finishing it off. If its prey wasn't alone it would still hunt its targets if it thought it was more powerful, though it probably just wouldn't enjoy it as much. The wolf couldn't use any magic itself though, so it was considered barely acceptable for a group of 5 rank 6 adventurers to hunt it, or 1 or 2 rank 5. Well, That seems like it's only the case if you're going to do something dumb like try and play fair. See, it's something that a lower mid-ranked adventurer could do, but it's out of your league. Give up on it and I'll help you find someone else. So I can hear you when I'm awake too, huh? When you prayed to me this morning you basically acknowledged me, opens up a few more pathways for communication than summoning you in your sleep. Well, whatever. We clearly see this pretty differently. I would say I feel pretty confident after all that I've read. It literally recommends at least 5 people a rank above you. How could you possibly be confident right now? Watch and see. The next week had been long, really long. He had to buy and gather his materials, turn them into something usable, and then trick the various guild members into telling him where this creature was likely to be found under the guise of hoping to avoid any danger as a solo gatherer. But it would soon be worth it. Night was falling and camp was set up under a tree, while a figure sat by an open fire. There was the meat of a small animal being cooked above it, while a few more that had been skinned were hung up to bleed, with the smell filling the area. The wind moved to carry it through all corners of the forest, hopefully attracting what he needed it to. I still say you're going to die. But Ben just ignored Myriad, staying silent and focusing on his task. The only thing he wanted to hear was if it was approaching. Instead he focused on enjoying the feeling of the night, the atmosphere of a camping trip filling him with pleasant memories of past family outings. He was bundled up in a warm blanket, looking up at the stars when he wasn't observing the area around him, wondering if any of them were home. They aren't, Myriad said, interrupting his thoughts. I don't know how much information they gave you at the church, but the other gods didn't just pull your soul from another world, but from a different universe altogether. There's no seeing that from here. It's been mentioned, but I still don't really understand the point of going through all that. Sounds like a lot of work. You don't know the half of it. They needed souls that hadn't been exposed to mana before, and magic is an indisputable part of this universe, as natural a force as gravity or the nuclear forces. The spatial gods had to work themselves to the bone to get some souls untouched by magic, so they would be ready to soak it up like a sponge. So that was the reason? Yep, worked pretty well too. In the other groups only a couple others chose not to be scouted, so there's about 200 new residents in the world ready and training to fight. Wait, does that mean that of all the people summoned, I was the only one who could have been scouted but wasn't? The silence spoke volumes and Ben did his best not to fall down another depressive spiral. He already knew he was the most worthless among the 20 he came with. What was another 180 on top of that? He couldn't let it keep getting to him and had to just do his best from here on out. Listen, Ben, a person is worth more than just their skills. The nations and city-states around just did the best they could making snap judgments. It has nothing to do with your value as a person. As a god, Myriad was privy to the thoughts of mortals. He knew that as Ben was thanking him for the support that he hadn't really believed it, but for now there was nothing he could do to help him. Ben would have to find his self-worth himself. Maybe if he succeeded here it would help with that. Of course a larger part of his mind expected Ben to die and that he would be back to where he started, believerless, but there wasn't much point in telling him that. He knew the boy had made up his mind, and that nothing he could say would change that. Wait, it's approaching. Ben tensed up. It all came down to this. He was pretty sure he would be able to avoid getting killed solely he wouldn't get too mad about all of the time she spent trying to teach him going down the drain, but they would find out soon. The creature for its part spotted the figure by the fire, dressed in an unreasonably red outfit, and loudly approached, trying its best to get his attention. It wanted him to know it was there, to feel afraid, but he wouldn't give in. When there was no reaction it seemed angry, personally offended that a scrawny thing so far beneath it would have the gall to ignore its majestic presence. 3 meters long and covered in thick black fur, it was definitely an incredible sight, but what Ben really saw were materials to be collected. He might not be able to do anything with the meat, but from what he had read the claws, bones, and fur were all good as crafting materials. He couldn't wait to get his hands on them. For its part, the pile of materials decided it couldn't wait to get its claws into him either. It had had enough of being ignored, and jumped towards its future victim, ready to rip off a limb or two to teach it some fear before digging into its flesh. At least that was the plan, but the moment he landed on it after clearing the fire the ground gave away, and long wooden stakes pierced its majestic body. It thrashed about in pain, but as Ben watched it from the tree above, he dropped 2 large rocks down on it. His aim was true, and its skull shattered under the weight of the falling stones. I can't believe that actually worked. I told you, didn't I? These things are probably plenty tough when dealt with head-on, but they're used to going after solo hunters that aren't expecting them, they aren't actually smart enough to spot a trap. Myriad actually found that to be a bit unfair to the beast. Ben had just used his skills and resources to his fullest advantage. When he started his plan, he only bought a handful of items. A shovel for digging a large pit, taking up nearly 8 hours to make it big and deep enough to serve the purpose Ben had in mind, as well as a knife to carve spikes from branches he had found gathered around the forest. That alone wouldn't have been enough, but he also got a large but thin tarp, a blanket, and a bright red cloth to aid in his scheme, not to mention the application of his skills. When he was still at the church, he tried playing around with enchanting a bit, just to see how it would go, and once he had gotten dismantling, one of the first things he did was apply it to a knife at the church. Once he did, it had a small but noticeable improvement in its ability to cut through objects. Learning from this, he spent some time applying it to all of the wooden spikes he had carved, hoping that plus the creature's weight would help them easily pierce its flesh. From there he did his best to apply stealth to his blanket and his tarp, to help hide himself and cover the spikes so that it wouldn't be able to see them, hopefully thinking it was just solid ground. To both sell that illusion and distract the creature from seeing it, he sprinkled it with dirt to make it blend in more and set up some garbage to look like a person, wrapping it in a bright red cloth to capture its attention and make it not inspect the area too hard. When all was said and done, the plan had worked out excellently. All that was left to do was get that apprenticeship. Falk had just finished giving a new staff to his favorite customer and was back at the forge to start making a few pans for a neighbor, when he spared a thought to his encounter with the boy from a week prior. He had selected a target for him that, while not so ridiculously challenging as to make his intent obvious, should have been enough to scare the brat away and seek work with someone else. He wouldn't make a good teacher, and he couldn't figure out why the boy had selected him to begin with. He didn't seem like he'd tried the other stores around and been rejected, but he couldn't know just what skills Falk possessed. He always kept those close to his chest. There was no reason to seek him out. Still though, a human. Shouldn't one of the bigger nations be out training him? Why was he searching for a teacher by himself? Like all the other city residents, Falk was aware of the hero summoning that had taken place around their world, and with the humans having been summoned so close to his home city, of course he had heard of them. A few even passed through this city to get to the nearest gate to travel to their new training grounds. Still, the boy would best give up and find somewhere else that was equipped to take on students, and Falk was best to focus on his own work for now, God's knowing he had plenty of other things to worry about than the state of one brat. As he decided to put these unnecessary thoughts behind him, he heard the door of his shop open. When he turned to see what this prospective customer was looking for, he was instead greeted by Ben, as if his previous thoughts had summoned him. "Damn it, brat, I told you, I'm not taking you if you can't hunt an Amarok, now get lost." He dismissed him, getting back to his own work. Ben ignored him, walking right up to Falk and handed a bundle over to him. "That's why I'm here, one Amarok pelt, freshish and ready to be tanned." Falk took a moment to look at what he had been handed and then took a closer look at the boy. It was clearly an Amarok pelt. He had hunted a few in his own time, wouldn't mistake one, and the boy for his part was an absolute mess now that he stopped to look, covered in dirt and blood. But he still couldn't believe the kid had actually managed it. "Sure, it's an Amarok, I'll give you that. The condition of it's pretty trash though, way too many punctures. Not to mention that I told you to get it yourself, no adventurers. The condition it's in wasn't a part of the deal, and I did get it myself." "Cut the crap, kid, there's no way you managed to stab the beast this many times and walk back here yourself. Hell, if you were in stabbing range, a monster like this could sink its teeth into you no problem." Ben was a little offended that all of his hard work was being dismissed just like that, so he stopped Falk and explained in every little detail how he had managed it, from research to crafting and setup to finally tricking the beast. The plan had taken him a week to pull off. It wasn't something he was willing to just have denied for the sake of the shopkeeper's convenience. "So after it was dead, I just hung out in the tree for the rest of the night to avoid getting murdered by anything else walking the woods, and when morning came I took some time to skin it, bury its bones to grab later, as well as take down the spikes and fill in the hole. Then I came back here." At a certain point Falk put his head into his hands. What the boy was saying was possible. Usually when an adventurer goes out, the point is to work on improving their skills as much as it is for completing their quests or collecting raw materials from animals, so traps aren't in common use. But it could work, he couldn't deny it. "So then," Ben started, interrupting his thoughts. "Are you going to keep your end of the deal?" "My end? You said if I could kill one you'd take me on. I killed one, so when should I start?" Falk let out a long unhappy sigh. "Damnable brat, I wouldn't make a good teacher. If you want to learn you should find somewhere else." I'll be the judge of that. Now when do I start? If this ever comes up again, I'm telling the next would-be student to hunt a bloody demon. Fine, you start tomorrow. The shop opens at the crack of dawn. Don't be late. You won't regret this, Mr. Fogg. I'll see you bright and early, Ben told him with a smile before running off. Yeah. And take a bath before you get here. Tracking blood and dirt through my bloody shop. He mumbled, pulling out a broom as tidying up a bit. So? Yeah, you showed your usefulness. I'll accept you as my god and toss you some prayers. As soon as Ben went to sleep at night, he found himself again in Myriad's divine realm, with him somehow managing to look antsy despite lacking a face or limbs or any other feature one could use to convey emotion. Knowing what he wanted, Ben gave in immediately. He had to admit that having a god around had its uses. As soon as Ben said the words, Myriad's body started to glow a divine light. Like a cubic disco ball. Ben quietly thought to himself. Even though Myriad could hear that thought, he wasn't going to let it get him down. This was the first believer he had had in a millennia. Just being properly acknowledged by a mortal felt incredible. Sorry to interrupt your little light show, but what now? Well, as my believer, I can grant you my blessing for starters. Though it will be weak now, it should get stronger if I grow in power a bit. I can also grant you a quest. No gift skill? I need you to pray to me consistently for a bit longer if I'm going to do that. A skill takes a lot of energy, and with the amount of strength I have now, it will have to be incredibly close to my properties as a god and the properties of my race. Okay, sounds neat. What sort will it be? There's a couple options, but not to worry, I'll make something that will suit you to the best of my abilities. Alright, I'll leave it in your hands. And what do you mean by a quest? The church must have not bothered explaining it since they didn't think it would be relevant to you, but gods can issue quests to the people. The more powerful the god, the more powerful the quest reward. I can't currently do anything too grand, but the good news about being my #1 believer is I should be able to issue them to you more often than an average person could hope to get them. Oh cool, then what's the reward? Myriad let out a small groan. Think you could hide your greed for a minute and ask what the quest is first? I'll be having you grow my faith. If you get me 5 new believers, I will raise your job level by 6. That sounded like an okay reward for now. After his months here, he hadn't done too much crafting, just some cooking, dismantling, and other experimenting at the church had only raised him to level 14. He was hoping he would get some more interesting options for whatever came next. There was only one small issue. There's no way I'm going to be able to find you 5 other believers, he said bluntly. Wait, don't be so pessimistic, it's not impossible. An unknown god with little power and not much that can be immediately offered, sounds pretty impossible to me. Not to mention, why would anyone switch their faith from presumably a powerful god to a weak one? Maybe if one of the world's deities is outed as being evil, we could scoop up some of their followers, but right now it just seems impossible. Well, if you accomplish something impressive, it may tempt some people towards me as a result. Me, the apprentice craftsman with level 1 skills at most, accomplish anything impressive? Come on, Myriad, you need to have some realism here. With the cruel reality of Ben's words, Myriad fell to the ground defeated. All the joy and energy he had been feeling from getting a believer vanished. Hey now, no need to be so sad, the deck's just stacked against you. Need power to get power, need followers to get followers. It's rough, but let's do our best. Myriad looked up, a bit of hope returning. So you'll take the quest? Is there literally any other option? This is the easiest one I can currently give you. Is there a time limit? Any penalty for failing? Nope, no limit or penalties. The only drawback is I can't give you another one until you complete this one. Alright, might as well give it a try. He rose again, rainbows flowing out of his silvery form. I know you'll figure something out, Ben, I believe in you. Now time to wake up, you wouldn't want to be late. With that, Ben felt himself coming to consciousness, but before he even opened his eyes he felt the world screaming in his head. Acquired Myriad's blessing. Received the quest religious growth. Acquired title Apostle of Myriad. I'm sorry, what of Myriad? Fogg arrived at his shop, silently hoping the boy would sleep in or not show up so he would have an excuse to dismiss him, but no such luck. The brat managed to show up before even he did and was sitting outside the shop, laying against the door. All he could do was groan a bit, forced to accept what he agreed to. Alright, get up, first things first, give the shop a sweep and we'll figure out where to go from there. Ben immediately got to it, cleaning up the shop with enthusiasm while Fogg had no choice but to use the few minutes he had to focus on something he had been racking his brain about all night, just how to train the brat. Unfortunately for him, Ben was thorough but quick, too quick. The shop looked fine to open and he was standing in front of Falk, looking up at him expectantly. Alright kid, first I guess you should make me something. We'll see where we should go from there. He brought him to a room in the back that looked like a combination of supply closet and work area. Buckets and drawers of materials were piled around, with a desk and tools hung around it, and a small shelf of books nearby. Ben's first thought seeing all of it was basically that it looked like fun. It was definitely somewhere he could sink a lot of hours if he was given the chance. He just had one minor problem. What am I supposed to make? Whatever you can for now, I just want to watch your process and see where you could improve at first. Help me pull the desk out front unless you're going to want to use the forge, then grab the supplies you'll need. To be clear, I'm only letting you grab from my stock today, in the future you'll have to supply yourself. Ben did his best to help move the desk the Yeti worked at into the front of the shop, before going back and looking around. There were metals and materials of all sorts. He saw the bones and teeth and skins of a variety of creatures, the woods from all kinds of trees and materials that were clearly organic in nature, but that he had no clue as to what they could be. There was also an unusual amount of stone, of various types, all organized in a back corner. He wondered about the room for a minute, taking it all in, making a mental list of what to explore in the future, while he tried to figure out what he was going to make. The options before him seemed limited. He originally considered himself something of an artist, dabbling in a variety of arts, but he didn't think that would work. He could stitch together furs to make a cloak or jacket, but that didn't feel right either. It wasn't until he came across some metal wire that he remembered an unfinished project he would never get the chance to complete, giving him a good idea of what to do. Taking the supplies and tools he would need to the front workshop, he sat down at the desk and got to work as his teacher stood above him, watching as he went. It only took 2 minutes for him to stop Ben from his work. What are you doing? I was going to make chain mail. I thought I would add stealth to it while I went to at least give it a bit more benefit. Yes, I can see that. I more meant why are you doing it so wrong? Fox seemed genuinely confused, which kept Ben from being too annoyed. He came here to learn and that's what he would do. What exactly am I doing wrong here? Gods, where do I even begin? You're going to make all that wire unusable if you keep this up, and it doesn't even seem like you're crafting. Fox, I'm going to need you to give me a bit more than that. Realizing he hadn't properly explained himself, Fox took a second to put his thoughts together and started again. You look like you're trying to enchant every single individual wire. That can be possible at a higher level, but right now you can't do that for something so small. The enchantment won't take and you'll render the material unusable. He picked up the wire Ben had been using and ground it between his fingers. It seemed to have lost all of its malleability, causing it to break into shards and dust. What you have to do is slowly add the enchantment to the entire thing as you go, spreading the enchantment across the entire item. Aside from that, do you not know how to use your crafting? He clearly did not with what was being asked, but he had to confirm anyway. Is it not just a way to have a better idea of how to put stuff together while also making you better at the process? Well, you're not wrong, but it's also like most other skills, you have to burn up a little mana to get its full effects. Since you can enchant, you should know how to do that, yeah? He did. It had taken a fair amount of trial and error at the church, as well as a lot of questions to the priests to figure it out, but when he got it was incredible. Alright, so just use mana with the skill and try again. Well, if I'm going to have any goals, they may as well be big goals. Falk gave him a large, toothy, scarier than intended grin. You say some good stuff, brat. With how late it is, there's no point in you going home. There's a blanket and pillow in the storage room. Sleep there and I'll wake you for work in the morning. The next day Falk woke Ben up and they went over their training plan before opening the store. Alright, brat, here's how things are going to work. You clearly don't have any experience at a forge and I doubt you have any practice at alchemy either. Each day get here an hour before the store opens and I'll give you a bit of a rundown on how to use the forge and how to brew potions. Since I doubt you'll be able to find a way to gather all the metals and alchemic components you'll need by yourself, I'll sell them to you at cost for now, and if I judge the quality of your products to be good enough you can sell them in the shop, though since they're being sold in my business and I'm taking my time to teach you, I'll be taking a reasonable cut. Any questions? Sounds good to me, but why alchemy? I didn't think I saw any potions in here before? Probably because you didn't come in here to buy anything. I keep a few by the front desk at the register. Besides that, you gotta learn at least a little alchemy if you want to use any monster parts in your weapons and armor. Which also means you can't skip out on hunting. Once you have potion making down and start applying alchemy to your blacksmithing, I expect you to go gather monster parts yourself. Wait, but I still don't get why it's used with blacksmithing? damn it all, you really don't know anything, do you? If you want to keep some of the monster's effects, be it affinities, resistances, or if you're particularly lucky, a monster's properties that can enhance a given enchantment, you need alchemy to preserve them. Potion making preserves and concentrates a plant's healing effects, it's the same idea. It can also make sure your products can hold their enchantments longer. Take the wooden spikes you were telling me about. If you had enchanted them a day before using them without putting any more mana into it, then they were probably only half as effective. With the right materials, the mana loss could be significantly slower. Some materials could even manage to hold mana without any loss or slowly absorb mana from the environment. How effective you use your skills will determine how good the final product is. And he paused, giving a wicked grin. How much you can sell them for? All right. What are we starting with then? Flack pulled out his card and directed it at Ben. We're starting with you paying for a week's worth of supplies. After that, I'll get you working on the backup forge in the back. Ben tapped his own card against Falk's, transferring the money over to him, and then went out to a back room and got to work. He was first shown how to start the forge, and from there Falk gave him a basic explanation of what he would be doing. For today I'll loan you some tools, but you're going to be using them to make your own, so make sure you do your best so you can use them for a long time. Since these will be for your own use, you won't be able to sell them, but it's an important step in learning to really appreciate the materials you work with. Now quiz time. What is the most important tool for a blacksmith? Would it be a hammer? That seemed to be what he would always see them wielding in shows and movies, so it felt like a safe bet. That's what most people would guess, but no. What's most important, and what you'll be making first, is a set of tongs. Why tongs? They certainly didn't seem super important compared to what you would use to shape your items. Do you want to be grabbing some red-hot metal with your bare hands, brat? Sure, shaping your metal is important, but if you can't move it the way you need to efficiently, the metal will cool and you'll lose too much time having to constantly reheat it. Now watch how I do it and repeat as I do afterwards. Falk immediately got to work as Ben watched on, entranced by the work of the smith. In a process of grabbing two long metal rods, heating and shaping them, punching a pin into them, and cutting them to the proper size, Falk had a pair of tongs done in no more than 15 minutes. There we go. I tried to keep it slower for you, but you should have the idea of how to make these. You call that slow? Even if they're just tongs, I can't believe you made them so quick. It's what happens when you get smithing to a high enough level, the metal works the way you need it to. You'll be a fair bit longer, but if you need anything, come grab me from the shop. I'll be working up front and watching the counter. He started to walk away before stopping with one last thought. Also, don't try and apply any enchantments to your items while you're making them. Since your crafting level is low, focus on improving that, and if you want you can work on enchanting after you're done for the day. Ben gave him a nod and went over to the forge to get to work. He grabbed his first metal bar and heated it up until it glowed a nice red color. Once it looked ready, he took it over to the anvil, and using one of the smaller hammers Falk had available, started shaping it in a way to make his tongs. With each strike he paid attention to how much the metal warped, how the shape changed to meet the image he had in his mind of what his tongs should look like. It didn't have to be perfect, but he wanted it to at least look decent if he was going to be using them from now on. Once the first was done, he grabbed a second bar and shaped it to match, at least as best he could. There was a little unevenness at the front of it that took longer to correct than he would like to admit, but given it was his first time at the forge, he was willing to cut himself some slack. Once both sides of the tongs were ready, he grabbed a punch and a pin to act as a pivot and started to set it. He took a second to collect himself and focus. He needed to make sure that when he punched both halves of his soon-to-be tool he got it in the same spot. It would do no good to have them lopsided, and went to it. It wasn't actually too hard, but given that if he messed up he would have to buy more metal from Falk, he really didn't want to have to put any more strain on his wallet. With both holes punched, he placed and secured his pin, then hammered a wedge into the ends until they were the proper length for him to use. With that done, he went in to show Falk. And here's the staff, hopefully this one lasts a bit longer than the last one. I'll see you in a few days then. It looked like he was just finishing with a customer. As he waved them off, Ben went up and showed him his end product. Not bad. I was expecting you to mess up the first time, but I guess this wasn't too hard. With this done we can start on the next step then, making you a hammer. Come and watch carefully, I'm only showing you this once. He was brought over to the forge in the front and watched Falk skillfully take a lump of metal and shape it into a tool, with the front end being flat and the back end being a wedge. He punched a hole into the center and fitted it with a wooden handle, and it was all done even faster than his tongs from before. Once again Ben couldn't help but be impressed by the quick and precise work Falk managed, and he was excited to try it for himself. He ran back to the small work area he had been given and got to it, taking a bar of iron and tossed it in the forge. Using his newly made tongs he grabbed it from the forge and started striking it, feeling each blow changing its shape, the rhythmic clanging filling his mind. Again he was slower than his teacher, but he didn't mind. Now that he was making things himself, finally putting his crafting to use, he could see it was about the journey, not the destination. He finished forging the hammer's head and secured it to a strong wooden bar to use as the handle, then took it to Falk to get his seal of approval. Feels like it may be a bit small, but it will do for now. I guess you're a bit small yourself anyway. I'm plenty tall for my race, you're just huge. Brad, I'm the runt of my family, your race is just too small. Well, that was a terrifying thought, but with his teacher's approval for his tools Ben was given the task of making J-hooks for the rest of the day to work on some of the different techniques he had learned so far. If I remember right, your strength was only at 90, right? You also have focus? Falk had come to check on Ben as the day was ending and prepared to send him home when he saw the small mountain of J-hooks beside him. That's right, why? No reason. Anyway, I've got a few books for you to borrow, just some on alchemy and enchanting. I'm giving you tomorrow off, so stay home and read them. Sure, sounds good, see you in a couple then. Good luck. Ben wasn't really sure what he meant by that, but he grabbed the books and left the shop. Since it had been a long one, he decided to turn in early and get to reading the next day. As he slowly woke up, he realized why Falk asked him those questions yesterday. Oh God, everything hurts. You called? Not you, Myriad. Wait, actually, can you do anything about this? I don't think I can move my arms. Actually, pretty sure I can't move anything. Looks like you're feeling the effects of using stamina in place of strength. Sorry, healing isn't my specialty, and with your high life and light resistances it would be even harder. Good luck though. UHG. The books he needed to read were left on the other side of the room. It was going to be a long day. The next couple months were busy. Ben's lessons were mostly split between blacksmithing and alchemy, with a bit of enchantment added here and there, while his free time was divided between reading from Falk's books, practicing some of the hobbies he already had like drawing and sculpting, as well as occasionally hunting and dismantling some beasts in a nearby woods to use for his training or to sell to Falk for the materials. As he was working at his forge, finishing up a staff enhanced with blood elk bone, a notification sprang up. Crafting level increased. His mind was suddenly clearer and his thoughts felt sharper. He looked at the staff he had just finished and could suddenly tell where he had gone wrong and how it could be improved upon, but that didn't matter right now. It was his first level up since he was at the church and he couldn't contain his excitement. He ran out to tell the only acquaintance he had in the town about his good news. Hey Falk. Guess what? He stopped short when he saw his teacher was busy interacting with one of the regulars. Sorry, I'll come back in a bit. Hold up Brad, I was just going to grab you. You've seen Thera before, haven't ya? Ben looked at the customer. It was hard to make out any details about them. They were a little shorter than himself and wearing a hooded robe and gave off a bit of an unapproachable vibe, but they were definitely a frequent shopper here. The only distinguishing feature he could really see was a paper white hand grasping a new staff, which they would come in almost weekly to get. We've never been properly introduced before, but I know they're your favorite customer. Nice to meet you, I'm Ben. Ben had never paid them much mind beyond wondering how they afforded to replace their equipment so much. He offered them his hand, but not even giving it a second look they turned away from him and back to Falk. What's this about Uncle? Uncle? His favorite customer is his niece and he didn't tell his wonderful student about this? What a no-good teacher. It's not like you've made any effort to learn much about him outside what he has to teach you. No, being right now Myriad, I'm being upset. She ignored my super friendly greeting. What this is about is that I've gotten a job I can't turn down, so I won't be able to make you any staves for a while. For the next couple months I'll be leaving it to my apprentice. What? Okay, sure, I guess making a staff a week won't hurt. The staves I make can last a week. He stressed. You'll be making 1 or 2 a day. Jesus Christ. What do you do with them? He asked Thera. He had made a few staves already and was told they should be fine to sell. How could they only last a day? That's not my name, and I'm an adventurer. Equipment breaks, she said with an air of dismissal. Thera has more mana and less control than a staff can handle. They shatter after a week. Uncle. He doesn't need to know that. He will if he's going to be adventuring with you. What? Both Ben and Thera yelled in tandem. Falk, I'm not an adventurer, I'm a craftsman. If I'm trying to make her a good quality staff a day, when am I going to have time to practice other things if I also have to adventure with her? And why should I have to work with someone who even you think is a pain in the ass, uncle? Wait, what? What terrible things are you saying about your wonderful apprentice behind my back? Well, first off, I'm usually saying it right in front of you, you're just too absorbed in your work to notice. As for why you should do it, Ben, I won't be charging you for any supplies you take to make her staves. She gets them for free, but I'll still give you the regular pay you would be getting for her work, so it's a good deal for you. As for you, young lady, I know you haven't been partying with anyone recently, and you know that isn't part of the deal. Party with my apprentice and I won't be telling your parents. Fine. She unhappily agreed. Not fine. Fuck, I'm all well and good for making the staves, but like I said, I'm no adventurer, you know, I don't have a single useful skill. Why should I put myself at risk? Boy, don't act like I don't know that you hunt something once or twice a week. I'm the bastard you've been selling your catches to. Sure, trapping things is fine, but hunting with a proper adventurer is completely different. I won't be able to keep up. Are you sure? I don't think you would be too bad, Myriad asked. If this girl has so much raw power that she keeps blowing up staves, then yeah, I should be fine. I just want to see how much more I can get from my dear teacher. Falk, for his part, seemed to have caught on quick to what Ben was doing. Alright, what do you want, brat? No point beating around the bush then. 2 things. Use of the workshop when you're done for the day so I can stay late and practice, as well as the rights to use whatever scraps are left from making her staves. The workshop I can do, but how do I know you aren't going to use a small piece of something and take the rest of it as scrap? Alright, let's define it then. Any leftovers the size of my fist or smaller are mine for the taking, and I won't use materials specifically to get the leftovers. Sounds good? I'll agree if it's items we have in steady supply. I can't very well be giving away any of the rarer materials willy-nilly. Deal. Alright, I can't imagine what you're going to use some small scraps for, but don't make too much of a mess with them. And since I'm leaving her safety in your hands, make sure you improve your skills. That's what I originally came in here to tell you actually. My crafting leveled up. Now that he thought about it, he leveled up while making a staff, and he'd been made to make quite a lot recently. Falk must have been planning this for a while. While on the topic, his new partner interrupted. What skills do you have? Anything that will be useful while hunting? Nothing too flashy, just got low levels in crafting, enchanting, focus, stealth, and dismantling. You really don't have much at all. Uncle, how exactly am I supposed to party with him? He's clever, you'll be fine. Why not let him know your skills and you can meet here tomorrow to start taking a few quests. She turned back to Ben, and although he couldn't grasp any expressions because of her cloaked figure, he got the distinct feeling she was unhappy. All you need to know is I have earth magic, nothing else is relevant. I'll be here an hour after sunrise. Don't be late. With all said and done, she quickly left the shop, not having anything left to discuss. Ben turned to Falk, looking at him expectantly. What? You never told me your favorite customer was your niece. Or that you had a niece in town for that matter. Well, first, that's because it's none of your business, but she calls me that because I'm a longtime family friend. Me and her parents go way back. Okay then, and will you still be around, or is this job going to be taking you away? I'm hoping you'll still be able to give my work a look over, even if you don't have time to instruct me. I'll be around most of the time, may have to disappear for a few weeks towards the end of the project, but you should be pretty competent in your skills by then. For now, show me what you've made. At his instruction, Ben ran back to his forge to grab the staff he had just finished and brought it back to Falk for an evaluation. He looked it over for a minute before giving his opinion. Turned out pretty well. It's upper common. Ben threw his hands in the air and gave a cheer. Ever since he had learned how to incorporate alchemy into his blacksmithing, his works had gone from being consistently lower common with the occasional middle, if he was extra lucky, to getting mostly middle common with the occasion upper. And every upper was worth celebrating since it meant they could sell for a higher price. Don't be too happy, brat. There are a lot of areas you could still improve on, and the jump from upper common to lower uncommon is still a big one. Yeah, I know, but I can already see how I can improve the next time. I didn't mix in the bone paste thoroughly enough for one, so there's probably some inconsistency in the rod, and I shouldn't have heated it as much either when I was forging it. That must have damaged the structure of the material in some small ways. Well, it's at least good that your eyes have improved some with your level at least. Now go home and sleep. This should be good enough for her to use tomorrow. With a wag of his finger, Ben told him off. Nope, I'll be here for a bit later. And what exactly do you mean by that? Did you already forget? I get use of the workshop when we close for the day. You meant immediately? No time like the present. Besides, I want to see how having level 2 in crafting changes things. Fogg let out a long sigh and walked to the counter before coming back, throwing a key at Ben. Here, don't lose it and lock up when you're done. With that, Fogg walked off and Ben went to the storage room, looking at everything there that he previously couldn't touch. Oh yeah, this is going to be fun. Thera woke up unhappy. Frankly, she had been angry since the previous night, having been forced into partying with some random man just because she didn't have anyone else to adventure with at the moment. No matter how much gratitude she had for her uncle or how much she respected his opinion, she would still much rather be going out by herself until she found a real adventurer she could work with. Still, she would need staves, and if this was how she was going to get them, then so be it. She would just treat it as if she were adventuring alone and hope whatever his name was could manage himself. She ate a quick breakfast with her aunt as the sun was rising and walked over to Fogg's shop, prepared to meet with her temporary companion, but saw nobody waiting outside, so she went in. Her uncle was sweeping and dusting the place, as he always did, to try and keep it presentable. "Good morning, Uncle. Where's this boy I'm stuck with?" She couldn't keep the annoyance from her voice. "Mornin', Thera, he's just behind the counter. Wake him up and you can be on your way." "What?" She wasn't immediately sure what he meant by that, but walked around the counter to see him asleep on the floor, one light blanket over him and another rolled under his head. "You can't be serious. Nearly stepped on him myself when I got in, but it looked like he had had a long night. Figured I'd let the brat relax a bit before you got here." She gave a loud sigh, even more unimpressed than she had been previously, and grabbed the staff Fogg had given her yesterday. It was a bit longer than her arm, and nice and solid. Seeing as how it would be the last one she got from Fogg for a while, it seemed a waste, but she used it to poke at the boy's face until he woke up. "Ugh. Was that really necessary?" he asked, massaging his jaw. "I told you we were leaving an hour after sunrise. It's not my fault you weren't up for it. Grab what you need and let's go already." Sure, give me a minute." He walked into the back rooms to splash some water on his face and grabbed 3 staves and a bag. "So what's the plan for the day?" She eyed them, unable to help but be a little curious about how they turned out, before answering. "We're going to the Adventurers Guild. Now come on and hurry up." She hurried over to the Adventurers Guild with him and went over to the front desk where they were greeted by an employee, the faceless hominid Ankh. "Morning, Thera. Oh, and you're with Ben. I didn't know you two knew each other." "Right, his name's Ben. I guess I should at least try and remember that." "Wait, how does he know Ankh? I thought you said you weren't an adventurer?" "Well, I've joined the guild, but I'm not really," he responded, shifting around awkwardly. Ankh stepped in to explain on his behalf. "Oh, he just joined to use our books to learn about the resources in the area. A little unusual, but there's no rules against it." "Didn't Uncle say something about buying materials he hunted? Maybe I'm just remembering wrong." "Well, unfortunately I'm forced to party with him for a while. Can you find something you think we could handle?" Ben, I have to say I don't think this is a good idea. Have you developed any combat skills in the past few months?" "I haven't, but this is the will of my teacher. For the next little while I'll be in charge of making her equipment, so do you think you could give us an easy quest for now so we could see how what I already made her works out?" "Well, if it can't be avoided then I guess that's that. Thera, I know you usually try one rank 6 quest a day, but for now I would recommend you accept rank 7 hunting quest. Right now I would say to try and find some skrells. There isn't a minimum quantity, we pay by the kill, and there's no time limit for it, so just hunt what you can while you get used to working with Ben, okay?" She had already been unhappy, and now she had to take quests below her level. "Fine. What do they look like and where have they been spotted?" Surprising her though, Ben spoke up to answer. "They're typically in the western part of the forest, about a 40-minute walk up along the river." "How do you know that?" "All the monsters in the area are written in the archives." He's quite the voracious reader. Ankh chimed in. "Fine then, we'll take it. Come on, let's go." They walked in silence as they left the town, Ben leading the way. They didn't talk for most of the trip, and Thera would have been happy to keep it like that if her curiosity didn't get the best of her. "What are you doing?" Ever since they left the town, Ben had been picking up handfuls of rocks and twigs, stared at one for a while, then dropped it and moved on to the next, all seemingly for no reason. "Oh, this? Fogg told me there was no real point in training my enchanting with him until I raised it another level or two, since my skill was still too low to do anything more than just apply skill effects or use basic enchanting spells on it, so when I get the chance I practice applying them until the enchantments break and damage the material." At that he gestured to the stone in his hand and gave it a small squeeze, causing it to crumble to dust. I only learned that enchanting actually has spells associated with it a little while ago beyond just applying skills you already have. Unfortunately, they end up being weaker than any equivalent skill that could be applied, but beggars can't be choosers. But why sticks and stones? Surely better quality material could hold more enchantments. Do you have any idea how expensive that would be? I'm already barely making enough to cover my living costs, gotta pinch every penny I can. Is that why you wanted any scraps you could get from my uncle? Well, that's one reason for sure, but really it's just for any general practice. Getting free leftovers is going to net me plenty of materials I normally couldn't afford, even if the quantities are small. It should be all sorts of fun seeing what I could do with them. There was a smile plastered on his face as Thera watched him ramble on about various things he wanted to try, and she started to just tune him out. He seemed passionate at least, and she couldn't help but be a bit envious of having blessed skills that he actually enjoyed. Her thoughts darkened as she thought about her own. Having earth magic wasn't so bad, even if her level with it was low, but as for the other one. But don't let me ramble on by myself, tell me a bit about yourself, Thera. Ben asked, pulling her away from her thoughts. Still, her life was private. Not something she would just share. There's nothing to tell. I left my family a year ago to see a bit of the world and improve my magic, that's all. Do anything for fun? No. God, I hope that's not true. It's good to have some excitement in life. I question how exciting a craftsman's life could be. His smile cracked, and for a second Ben wore a truly sad expression before bouncing back. Oh, you may be surprised. Never know when something unexpected may happen. She wanted to ask what he meant and was a little worried she offended him before, but chose to say nothing. It was never a good idea to get too close to anyone she partied with. They walked in silence for a while longer before Ben stopped. All right, this should be the general area. We need to start looking. Once they arrived at their destination, Ben set out what he was thinking. The staff you currently have is the last one Fox gave you, right? You should probably save it for emergencies. For now, do you mind trying the ones I made and tell me how they feel? She looked at her staff hesitantly before stringing it over her back and grabbing the one Ben was offering and gave it a look over. The design is pretty plain and it feels rough. Are you sure it will hold up? No clue, but that's the one I finished before my level went up. The two I made after should be better. She raised the staff in front of her and concentrated, forcing mana through it to bring together her spell. Ben watched in anticipation, anxious to see whatever she would bring forth. He had seen a few smaller acts of magic in his months here, but it looked like she was preparing something big. All at once the ground shook as chunks of earth were pulled from it and coalesced into a rough ball in front of her, about 2 meters in diameter. With a swing of her staff the ball flew, for a couple meters, before falling to the ground and collapsing back into loose dirt. It was a little disappointing, but when he turned back to her the problem became obvious. Towards the end of the spell the staff had shattered into slivers of metal. Useless. Her frank evaluation hurt a little, but there was no mistake, his work didn't live up to the task. So the first one didn't work out, we still have 2 more. He told her with forced cheer. Maybe you could use a smaller spell this time? We shouldn't need something like that for hunting skrells. I can't, she muttered under her breath. Sorry, what? He hoped he misheard her, but that dream was dashed. That's as small of a spell as I can do, okay? Have a problem with that? She yelled at him angrily. He couldn't even notice how defensive she was with how much was going through his head. That's as small as she can make it? Is that what they meant when they were talking about how much mana she has? Hey Myriad, are you around? What am I supposed to do about this? Well, I guess I can see why she goes through so many staves. She must have incredibly high mana but low skill level. She wouldn't have any control to go along with it. I doubt she can even use magic without a staff. Mind showing me what you can do without a staff so I have a reference? He asked, hoping Myriad was wrong. To his relief she started gathering her power without argument, though she looked unhappy about it, and started to use her magic. Loose dirt tens of meters around them rose into the air, then promptly fell to the ground again. Was that it? Got a problem with that? Nope, just thinking is all. Do you think either of the other staves will work? They should at least be able to properly fire one spell. I think. Not reassuring. Okay, I have to ask, how many shots would you say you get off with Fox staves before they break? I don't see any relevance to the question. She's trying to avoid answering. Fox said they last her a week. It can't be too bad. Myriad was trying to be optimistic, but Ben heard the edge of worry in his voice. My first staff didn't even really let you finish a spell. If my teacher thinks I should be able to make you something that would last a day or two, I need to know what the expected number of shots should be. She looked away, clearly not wanting to have this conversation. Ben did his best to contain a long sigh and continued. Look Thera, I'm going to be doing my absolute best to make you the best product I can. They may not meet the standard you're used to, but I want to at least know how much I need to improve if I'm going to meet my teacher's expectations. To do that I need you to work with me, I won't judge. Fine, but keep it to yourself. About 14 or 20. I'm keeping my face straight, right? Doesn't look like I'm about to scream or anything? You're good. Let's say 20 then. Are you going out to hunt 7 days a week? 6. I take 1 day off to relax. Okay, so then let's say I need to get my staves to a quality where they can last about 3 shots a day. Does Falk know you only get about 20 uses out of each staff? Again she just fidgeted about and tried to avoid the question, which was all the answer Ben needed. Got it. Alright, we're having a change of plans, try out the last 2 staves then we're heading back. I'm going to need to experiment a little to make something that will work better. But we haven't even hunted anything yet. Are you that short on money? Money isn't the issue. We'll never get our adventurer rank up if we don't hunt consistently. It looked like her greed leaned more towards prestige than wealth, and Ben was going to have none of it. If the staves I've already made can't hold up through 1 spell then you aren't going to be able to hunt anything anyway. Just let me watch you fire your spells and I'll hopefully have something a bit more usable in the next week. She couldn't argue the fact that they probably wouldn't have any success anyway, but she was still far from happy about the turn of events. Still, she did as she was asked and grabbed the next staff, a wooden one wrapped in a metal wire treated with Hauntar blood, and prepared the same spell as before. She began using her magic and again had a large ball of earth floating in front of them before sending it flying, this time getting about 10 or 15 meters before crashing to the ground, the staff shattering in her hand. Well, that was an improvement at least. Would act as a better conductor of earth magic, or could the strengthening properties of the Hauntar blood have kept it together for longer? Either way, try the final one then let's get out of here. She dropped the remaining fragments of the last staff and grabbed the final one, Ben's personal favorite. This was another metal one, but it had a soft blue glow to it from a reaction between the copper it was made with and some nightmare bone. Why does it look like this? She asked, hesitant to use the mysterious item in her hands. Since I was allowed to use anything I tried experimenting with some of the more unusual materials in the shop. I gotta say, I'm real happy with how it turned out. It looks a little evil. Hands grasping at his heart he tried to put aside her words. That's probably the best staff I've made to date. If we take the materials I used into account then I would say it's more valuable than any staff an average rank 6 would be using. Well, I guess you're used to using exceptional staves but I'm still really OWFUCK. He fell to the ground in immense pain, initially not sure what had happened, though looking down at his leg the cause became clear to see. About the size of a cat with 3 eyes and a mouth that took up most of its face, a Skrell had sunk its razor-like teeth into the flesh of his calf. Though the target of their quest had come to them, it wasn't anything to be happy about. The reason such a creature was asked to be hunted was because they were entering a dry season which also happened to be their breeding season, and Skrells were known for possessing a weak fire magic. Usually not enough to do anything, but in a time of year when there was little rain the chances of a forest fire spiked drastically. It made keeping their population low a priority around this time. That may make them sound incredibly dangerous, but in reality they would usually pose no more threat than the cats they resemble. That's only if they don't get their teeth into you, of course. Ben, for his part, lacking in luck, had the small beast latched onto him, its teeth heating up to cook the flesh they were digging into. He reached down to try and pull the creature away, but the moment he grabbed at it, it ended up securing 4 sets of claws into him as well, latching on in such a way that he wouldn't be able to get it off without taking some large chunks of flesh as well. Thera personally was less worried about keeping his skin where it belonged. Using the last staff he had provided, she swung back with it, batting the creature in the skull and with a sickening crunch sent it flying along with about a couple golf balls worth of meat from his leg. Blood pouring from his calf, Ben took some deep breaths, trying to calm himself down and get his pain under control. The moment this stopped being about hunting and became focused on seeing the stave's performance, he should have tried to move to a safer area, he just hadn't been thinking. It could have been worse, but now that he got his blood all over the place they needed to get out of there and back to town. Thanks for the save. Mind giving me a hand back? He asked, trying to keep the pain from leaking into his voice as he reached up a hand towards her. Thera barely even looked at him, instead handing over her staff. Use this as a crutch and let's head back to town to get you treated. He took it and forced himself up. The staff was barely long enough to act as a cane, but he could tell from her attitude it would have to do. The walk back was longer than the walk there. To Thera's credit, she didn't leave him behind and she kept checking on him as they went. She just didn't support him at all as he stumbled along, heavily relying on the staff as he lost blood till they made it to the front gate. "God's below, you aren't looking too good, boy, are you both okay?" A gatekeeper was quick to ask when seeing Ben's state. "Nothing that a healer can't fix." He was quick to reply. "Except I'm not sure I can't really afford a healer, can I? Hey Thera, mind using the last staff to dig a hole in the ground? I'll crawl in and you can bury me, we'll save everyone some hassle." Even if he was kidding, she was not impressed. "You aren't going to die. Wait with the guard and I'll get some help," she said before running off. "I was serious about not being able to afford a healer," he yelled after her before collapsing to the ground. When they left the forest, he quickly wrapped his leg in a strip of shirt to try and keep the bleeding down, but he still experienced a steady amount of blood loss on the walk back. Now that he was at least back at the town, he took off his make-do bandage to inspect the damage. On the more positive side, the biggest wound wasn't bleeding quite as badly as he thought it would. On the negative side, it's because the muscle was slightly cooked, and every movement of his leg sent pain through it. Just walking back had been torture. As he laid against the gate trying to ignore his body, he heard the sound of feet slapping against stone and turned to see Falk running towards him with Thera trailing behind. "Brat, what the hell happened to you?" the giant of a man yelled. "Just a bit of carelessness, biting me in the butt is all." "Well, biting me in the leg actually. I'll be more careful next time," he joked as a wave of dizziness assaulted him. "Fine, we'll talk about it later. Let's just get you to a clinic. I wasn't joking when I said I don't know if I can afford one before. We both know the owner, the cost won't be too bad," Thera said, staring at the bloody mess that was his leg. "Can you stand? Give me a minute." He tried to get up but immediately stumbled and would have fallen if Falk hadn't been there to steady him. When his teacher saw that Ben would be struggling for the entire way, he scooped him up in his arms. "Falk, you old gentleman, I bet the ladies love this. Boy, don't make me drop you. Please no, keep carrying me in your big strong arms," he joked, feeling the blood loss catch up to him as his consciousness drifted away. "I really shouldn't make it a habit to wake up in strange rooms," he said to himself as he regained consciousness. He wasn't expecting a response, but a voice spoke up from beside him. "Oh, you're finally awake. Won't Thera be thrilled?" Turning to look at the speaker, Ben would have mistaken her for being human. She was a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 30s with pale skin and long black hair. The only things that set her apart from his own race were cat-like pupils and a long, thin, leathery black tail coming up from her waist and holding a cup to her mouth. Still groggy, he had to ask, "Where am I? What happened? You ended up losing a lot of blood on the way back and passed out." "I'm one of the town's healers, Sonia. My niece and Falk ran you to me. I have to say healing you was a pain, took most of the day. Falk warned me your life resistance was way too high, but I haven't had to put in this much effort since I first started training in healing magic." His leg was feeling noticeably better, and when he sat up he could see the skin was smooth and healed. He could also see he was no longer wearing pants, so he grabbed a blanket to tastefully cover himself. "Thank you, I really appreciate the help. Awkward side note though, I already mentioned to Falk and Thera I don't know if I can afford the treatment." It wasn't strictly true. He had money saved for living expenses, and since he found employment with Falk right after leaving the church, he hadn't spent too much of the money they had given him, but it was still slowly decreasing. He didn't know how expensive it could be since he never looked into it too deeply, but paying for a healer could end up putting a far bigger dent in his savings than he would like. "You don't have to worry about it," Falk said. He would cover the costs, and I'm an old friend of his anyway. I wouldn't charge his first apprentice too much. What a softie. His teacher was already being far more accommodating than he let on at first, and now this. He would have to give the man some proper gratitude. "He really is, just don't say it to his face. And don't mention that I said he's covering your costs, he didn't want you knowing. Man, for how gruff he acts, he's too nice of a guy." "He's an absolute sweetheart," she agreed happily as she smiled down at him. "Now you should be good to go, you were asleep for most of the day. Just let me grab Thera for you." "Wait, you don't have to dash," but she was already gone. He took the moment of privacy to slip on his clothes that had been moved to his bedside before Thera walked in. "Oh hey," he said, awkwardly buttoning his pants. Before he could think of whatever he should say, she was bowing at him. "I'm sorry. If I had told you about my magic earlier, then you wouldn't have been hurt the forest." "What? Don't worry about it. I should have asked more questions before we left, and it's my fault for not paying attention. I'm usually a bit more careful, I swear. They stood in silence for a moment longer, both feeling awkward and not knowing what to say before Thera spoke up. Should we go report the kill to the guild? It may have only been one, but I guess it will be the last we can do until you make me a new staff. Sure, sounds good. As they were leaving, Ben realized he hadn't been brought to a clinic, but to their actual home, and then wandered into the guild. Ankh was still at the counter and gave them both a friendly greeting when they went in. Back already? How did the hunt go? Not ideal, Thera told them, neglecting to mention the specific events of their hunt. We only got one. A small problem came to Ben's mind. Wait, we didn't bring the body. How are we supposed to prove we killed one? I guess this is your first quest, Ben. You don't need to bother bringing any remains unless there is a specific request for them. Now here, both of you give me your cards. Whenever you hunt something after you've joined the guild, can inspect them for what you've hunted and how much you contributed. Thera, it looks like you got 70% of the kill. Ben came to a realization as they were giving their explanation, and he wasn't sure he wanted to deal with the outcome of it. Hey, you can give mine back. I don't really care about raising my rank at all. Nonsense, it's important to do this to ensure everyone gets proper credit for their work. Now, this can't be right, Ankh muttered as Thera looked between them both, a little confused by Ben's sudden awkwardness and Ankh's change in demeanor. Ben, you have a lot of unreported kills. If they had a face, Ben was sure Ankh would be staring a hole through him. I thought you said you were just going out to gather supplies. I mean, technically monsters are supplies. He told them with his most innocent look. There's a few dozen on here, and your first kill was an Amarok. I thought you didn't have any combat skills? I don't, I just made some traps is all. Blame my teacher, he was insistent that I hunt one if he was going to take me on. Wait, how much did he contribute to hunting an Amarok? Thera cut in. 100%. He managed it without help. He couldn't tell why, but he could hear a lot of unhappiness in their voice. Is that a problem? It's not exactly a problem per se. It's just, it may cause you some issues later is all. Wait, why? You've successfully hunted enough powerful monsters to be moved up a rank. Ordinarily, this would be a matter of congratulations, but ranking up also comes with its own added responsibilities. Namely that you'll now have to participate in any emergency quests. There aren't many that have happened that would take rank 6s, normally that's reserved for rank 5s at the lowest, but it can happen. This regularly wouldn't be a big deal. Any emergency request can be dangerous, but the only time lower ranks are included is if it's something they should be able to manage or if it's expected everyone would die either way. The issue is that without any combat skills, even the safer ones could leave you at risk. You could always revoke your rights as an adventurer, but then you would no longer get access to the archives. Ah well, I'll keep being an adventurer for now, that's not too bad after all. Aren't we expecting the world to be invaded in a few years? Seems a bit silly to worry about any other emergencies in the meantime. I'm not sure if that's a positive or extremely negative way of looking at things, they said while handing back his card. It just is what it is, he told them, glancing at his card and about to put it away before having to do a double take. Hey, I think you made a mistake, you added a lot of money to my account. Acquired skill, Connect level 0. After months of waiting, worshipping Myriad had finally paid off and he got a gift skill from his god. It only left a question. What does it actually do? The name didn't really give many hints and he wanted to test it out as fast as possible. It lets you connect to other living things by touching them. At low levels you will probably only be able to access feelings instead of any thoughts, but practice it and you'll get there. What? Got something to say? No, this is cool and all, it's just a little underwhelming I guess? Why would you leave a skill like this unfinished anyway? Underwhelming? Here I am slaving over some hot magic and soul bits for months to put this together and you're underwhelmed? You're literally the first creature in this world to have this skill, couldn't you be a bit more excited about it? He could feel the indignation coming off of his god in waves for a moment before he seemed to calm down and answer his question. Anyway, if I overdevelop it the skill will be more fixed in the way it grows with time. Leaving it a little unfinished gives the world itself some room to make it more flexible. I'm hoping that will let you do some things my kind weren't able to. Oh? Like what? Well, after your recent encounter, if it could develop so it could be used without having to make physical contact, that would be ideal. It wasn't a function of my own race, but you would be able to use it as a sort of danger sense in that case and hopefully not die until you secure me some believers. Still, now it's out of my hands so we'll just have to wait and see if such a convenient development occurs. Even still in its base form it's a skill I put a lot of work into making so none of this being underwhelmed nonsense, he finished with a huff. Okay, you're right. Sorry. Come here and let me test it out then. Ben reached out his hand and approached his god, but Myriad flew back like a bullet. Hey, be careful with that thing. It may be okay to use it on a mortal or anything weaker than you, but at your current level you won't be able to control what gets in. Using it on a god is likely to make your head explode. Noted. He withdrew his hand, more than a little uncomfortable at how close he had come to another early death. Still seems like a bit of an odd skill. How's it related to your race then? It's not that odd. We would just directly transfer information from our subbrains by linking tentacles. It's pretty efficient. I don't know why more races don't do it. Anyway, just make sure to practice it. I may have created the skill itself, but how it grows and changes is in the hands of you and the world. He decided to put the information about his god's race on hold for now. Alright, will do. I guess I am a little curious about using a skill nobody has ever used before. Excellent, now go have fun. It looks like you're about to wake up. Once again the hard end of a staff was shoved into Ben's delicate jaw. If you keep waking me like this I'm going to bruise, he told Thera as he cracked open his eyes. Then find somewhere better to sleep than the shop floor. Uncle, are you really okay letting him do this? Falk gave a shrug. The boy cleans up well enough before he goes to sleep that I don't have to do much in the morning, so it's fine. How many staves did you manage to make then? Just 4, but I feel pretty good about the last 2. Alright, you two avoid the deep woods while you're testing them. Don't want a repeat of yesterday. We'll be careful, Uncle. Actually, before we leave I got a new skill I want to test out, if you guys would give me a hand. That caught both of their attentions. While getting new skills was common enough, it was still an exciting event. Now how did you manage to get a new skill working away all night? It's not something like sleep resistance, is it? No, it was a gift skill from my god. I didn't expect you to be the pious type, Thera chimed in. I'm definitely not. I just give a prayer or 2 a day to keep on his good side, also admittedly a few while he was limping and bleeding, but he wasn't in the mood to bring that up again. Well then he must be fond of you, brat. What's the skill? It's called Connect. If I can take one of your hands it should let me link up with you and feel your emotions. I'll pass. Thera had seemed interested up until she learned how it was used, but Falk for his part held out his hand. Alright brat, let's give it a go. Always exciting to see a skill I haven't heard of before. Ben grabbed his teacher's large hand and ran mana through his body, activating the skill. Immediately he was hit with 2 feelings, excitement and nervousness, and instantly knew they were coming from his teacher. They came at him so hard that it was a little overwhelming, and apparently Falk felt the same way, breaking off the connection and taking a step back. Damn it lad, you didn't mention it was a 2-way connection. Go eat something from the back if you're that hungry. Oh sweet thanks. Ben ran and grabbed a quick bar of jerky to chew on before coming back. So I was never told you would be able to feel my emotions too, or that hunger would count as an emotion, but still that was a neater experience than I thought it would be. I can't really see much use for it at the moment, but I'll train it up a bit to see how it grows. It would be rude to neglect a skill your god saw fit to give you, just so long as you don't ignore your work here. Do what you want. Though I don't think I'll be helping you with that a second time. Felt too weird. Fair enough. How should I train it then? Worry about that later. Thera cut in. Let's go try these staves already. Surprised but happy with her enthusiasm to try out his new works, they quickly went off to a field just outside of town that other adventurers and mages would go to train. Couldn't we go somewhere with a bit more privacy? She asked him. Why? This is a designated training ground for this type of thing. It's just a bit embarrassing to have everyone see me fail at casting spells is all. Not to mention I know a few of the adventurers here. Well, if you aren't comfortable I guess we could venture a bit deeper into the woods. There are a lot of bugs in this area anyway. He told her, slapping something off the side of his neck. She thought back to the events of the previous day and knew she had to make the responsible choice. No, I told Falk we wouldn't go into the woods. Let's just get this over with and leave. Alright, in that case let's try the one you didn't end up using yesterday and then move on to the next 2. She did as she was told, starting with the first staff and trying to make her earth bullets. For all 3 she was able to get it off the ground, and the first 2 even let her throw them a couple meters, while the last one shattered with the ball of dirt floating in front of her. Okay then, that went about as well as expected, he said while Thera wiped away some dirt that blew all over her cloak and hood. Now for the next 2. I have a lot of confidence at least one of these will work out. She looked at the remaining 2 staves a bit dubiously. Unlike the others that looked mostly like traditional staves, if not a bit rough, these 2 were monsters. Just thick rods that would take at least 2 hands to wield with no way of being useful in an actual fight. Aren't these a bit too big? They're just prototypes, as long as they work I should be able to scale the size down a bit. Come on, try the first one. Still hesitating and with a bit more effort than she was used to for lifting a staff, Thera lifted the first one and prepared her spell. She felt her mana pass through it and started lifting up the earth. It was going surprisingly well at first and she was starting to feel confident, but as she lifted her staff above her head, preparing to swing it with her magic, it exploded, far more violently than any staff had before, as slivers of metal and dust flew all around her. "Are you all right?" Ben yelled, reaching out to her, but she jerked away from his hand. "I'm fine, that was just a little unexpected." "What happened?" "I was testing out a couple different ideas for the staves was all. The one you just used was made by layering different materials enchanted with varying levels of earth resistance. I put lower resistance in the center with a higher resistance on the outside, so that must have caused a buildup of pressure while magic was passing through it. If you're okay, let's try the second one then. It's not going to blow up too, is it?" she asked, eyeing the rod suspiciously. "For this one I did the opposite, giving it a resistant core that has progressively less resistance the closer to the outside it is, so probably not." Of course, I didn't expect the first one to blow up either, so who's to say? She was far from confident after hearing his answer, but she would never get a working staff if she didn't try them. She once again picked it up and started to pass her magic through it. It felt harder than before, like more of her mana was being lost compared to when she would usually use the spell, and she thought her ball of earth was slightly smaller than usual as well. Still she managed to get her earth bullet prepared in front of her. She gave her rod a swing, and it was looking good, being thrown farther than any of her previous attempts, a good 20 meters, before it fell apart. She took a look at the staff in her hand. It was still intact, but only barely. Large cracks had formed throughout its surface, going down nearly to its core. But it hadn't shattered. Just to try she ran more mana through it to see if she could manage another spell, but that was more than it could handle and it fell apart in her hands. So I'm on the right track then. I should be able to make it smaller no problem, but how will I get it sturdier? Is it just a question of what materials I use? He looked up from his mutterings and turned to Thera. "How did it feel to use? Was there any issues?" "Nothing major, I was able to use that spell about as well as I can with Fox's staff." "That's good, but you could only do it once. I would like you to at least get 4 uses out of it before it breaks to put me on par with what Fox thought I could do. I'll have to experiment with some of the materials in the shop, maybe try something that has natural earth resistance? Or should I try to make a better composite material?" So you think you'll be able to make something stronger then?" "Without a doubt, it's more of a question of how long it will take. For now let's head back to the shop." As they wandered back into town, Ben decided it was time to ask a question that had been on his mind for a while now. "So just to be clear, do you not like being touched in general, or is it something about me in particular that bothers you?" "What? Where did that come from?" "I mean, it's pretty obvious. Anytime I've come close you've backed off immediately. It's not a problem or anything. I'll totally respect your boundaries, I just want to know if it's because of me in particular." "It's not you, I'm not one for physical contact. If you'll respect that then it's fine." "Alright, cool." A small load felt like it had been lifted from Ben's mind. Everyone has their preferences, he was just happy to know it wasn't anything against him as a person. "In that case, want to grab a bite? I say I don't have a problem with you and your first thought is to make a move on me?" she responded, going on guard immediately. He raised his hands in defense of himself. "Whoa now, nobody's making a move on anybody, least of all my teacher's niece. I just thought it would be nice to try and get along since we'll be working together for a while. I don't really know anyone in town aside from Falk." She let out a long sigh at his response. It would be easier to reject him if he was trying to flirt instead of just wanting to make a friend. "Look, you seem like a nice enough person, but I'm not looking to make any friends. All that does is complicate things." "Fair enough," he responded with a smile, though inside he was more than a little crestfallen. He really didn't have much of an idea on how to meet people and currently his only social interaction was with Falk and Myriad. "Am I not enough for you though? It would just be nice to have some more company outside of my head." Still, he was hungry anyway, so he stopped at a food cart for a bowl of, well, it was something and the taste wasn't bad so it probably didn't matter, before scarfing it down and making it back to the shop. They greeted Falk and Ben went back to the storage room to grab some new materials. At this point he had a pretty good idea of the properties of what was around, so he grabbed a few that seemed like they could be useful and got experimenting. Thera had followed Ben back to the shop without much thought, but now that she was there she honestly wasn't sure why she had come. She had just finished telling him she wasn't interested in making friends and now here she was wasting her day hanging out with him. Well, it couldn't strictly be called hanging out. Does he always get so absorbed in his work, Uncle? The moment he grabbed everything he wanted from the storage room it was like nobody else was there. Why do you think he keeps falling asleep in the shop? Before I gave him a key I would always have to pull him from his work by nightfall or he wouldn't notice the time himself. Seems like he needs a hobby. He has his own problems just like you Thera, be nice to the boy. I'm not the one always calling him a brat, she said, giving her uncle what he suspected would be a pointed look if her face wasn't covered. Bah, I do it with affection. He'll start to grow on you. So are you going to head back and help Sonia at the clinic or stick around for a bit? There's not really any reason to stay, I just thought I would say hi. Well, why not watch the boy work for a bit? You might enjoy it. Why would I do that? Let's say it's to teach you to appreciate the amount of work that goes into one of your staves. Besides I remember when you were a kid you'd always fall asleep after watching me work for hours. I'm not a child anymore, she replied reflexively, before giving it a little more thought. But I guess it couldn't hurt to stay for a little at least. Falk gave her a smile which she ignored and went to sit a little way from Ben. He really didn't notice she was there and she had to remember he had the focus skill, though she personally wasn't sure of its effects it seemed clear enough, and she had to wonder if he could tune out the world like that because he had the skill or if he had the skill because he was so naturally good at it. Whatever it was he was completely absorbed in his work, which at the moment entailed grinding a variety of horns and bones in a mortar and pestle into a fine powder. She remembered watching Falk do the same when she was younger and thought he had been able to do it a lot quicker, but then again her uncle's levels were probably a lot higher than Ben's at the time, she shouldn't compare. He was thorough in his work though, not taking his eyes off each material until it reached his standards, before putting the finished powder into a bowl off to the side and starting on the next one. Once all of that was done he went to the forge and pulled out some metal bars he must have put into it before she had come over and started pounding it out into a flatter sheet, and sprinkled some of the powdered bone or claw onto it before folding it in on itself, pounding it down again, and adding more. The process repeated for 6 or 7 more times, reheating as necessary before he was apparently satisfied with that particular sheet. It was left just outside the forge, but close enough that it would keep some of its heat. From there he repeated the processes again and again with different powders and different metals. Thera would be embarrassed to admit that Falk had been right, this really was reminding her of when she would watch him work as a child. Seeing Ben's focus on his task helped the time flow by easily, it was at least more entertaining than helping clean for her aunt. Once all the metals were apparently done, at least in his eyes, he started to cut a few smaller strips from 2 of them while leaving the other 3 in their original state, and started to wrap one around the other, and then the next on top of it and so on, until he had something a bit more thick and stout than the staves he had given her to use earlier that day. When she saw what he'd made she thought it was about done, that it would still be a while before he could get it any smaller and she would just have to get used to using a bulkier tool for a while, but he continued to process it. It was put back into the forge and once heated was hammered and rolled out, stretching the material in length. Once he had it a little longer than twice the length she would normally use, he hammered a wedge into the middle of it, breaking it in 2 before taking some time to round the ends off both into a nicer shape. With that done he took a second to appraise his work, before stopping and yelling, "Ah, God damn it. You know I would prefer you not invoke my being in vain. And I would prefer if I hadn't just wasted a bunch of time." "What's wrong?" Thera asked him, and Falk came to the back as well after hearing him yell. "Oh hey, I didn't realize you were still here." "Nothing wrong, in fact it's the opposite of wrong, it's good news. Just would have rather gotten it before starting on the new staves. My enchanting went up. Isn't that great though?" She was a little vexed at his apparent unhappiness. In the few days she'd known him his level went up for 2 separate skills, if only she could be so lucky. "It is. It's fantastic. I just wish it happened before I started this is all." "Ha boy I get you. There isn't a craftsman alive who doesn't know the pain of working hard on something only to suddenly become able to do a better job at it after the fact," Falk told him surprisingly sympathetically. "Unfortunately it comes with leveling. Your greatest gains and improvement always come after your best work. Speaking of, may I?" Gesturing at the 2 staves at the forge, he clearly wanted a look and Ben was happy to comply. It never hurt to have his teacher's opinion. As he gave one a quick appraisal Falk couldn't help but let out a low satisfied whistle. "I gotta say boy, Even if you're still learning a lot of the craft, you're probably the only one who could make a staff like this at your level. It's a clever idea, though definitely unusable to anyone but Thera. Wait, why? Thera wanted to know. Don't get me wrong, it looks fine and all, but what has you so impressed? Ben, did you tell her at all how you enchanted the staff? I mentioned it a bit when she tried out the prototype earlier today, though that one was bulkier and only used 3 layers. Can you guys just tell me what you're talking about? She asked in some exasperation. Ben took the lead. I didn't do anything too crazy, I was just able to create a 5-layer gradient of earth resistance enchantments. I'm pretty sure anyone could do it. But there's only a handful of people who could do it like you, boy. He saw that Thera continued to not understand, so he went on to explain. I'm not sure how much of his skills he's mentioned, but if he doesn't mind, Ben gave him a quick okay. Alright, so one of the boy's blessed skills is enchanting. Now regularly enchanting can only apply about 10% of any affinity or resistance for every level you have in it, but since his is blessed that means he can get 15%, or 30% total since he was level 1. Now ordinarily that still wouldn't be a ton, but the boy has some really good earth resistance. Just the core of the staff alone has a resistance of 24. Wait, that's almost as good as my actual earth resistance? Well, with the level up he could make something even greater, around 36 I believe. That's insane. Falk had been right, she really needed to try and appreciate the work that went into one of the staves she could only get a few uses out of. Gods know she wouldn't have guessed it would take a resistance level that high just to make a staff she could use once. Ben for his part had something else on his mind. Come on now Falk, you know what I want to know. His teacher let out a long sigh. Now boy, this here is really good work. You shouldn't let an appraisal get to you. And that means it's bad. Huh, middle common. Middle common. Not even upper? I don't want to say I thought it would make it into uncommon, but this is some of my best work. Uncle, that does seem a bit low. What's the issue with it? Will it not work? No, it will work fine. Like I said, it's good work. The issue is that it's a specialized tool. Wait, I'm not explaining this well. Specialized tools don't get lower ratings, it's just a matter of how this particular one was specialized. What do you mean? Ben asked, curious on where to improve. Let me show you, I have a bit of earth magic myself, so let's use a simple spell. Falk held the staff in front of him and prepared his magic, forcing mana through the rod, only for nothing to happen. Falk? Are you going to show us? Brat, I am. To any ordinary earth mage this is literally worse than a stick. The small amount of mana I was able to channel through it couldn't even pull together a few grains of dust, let alone an actual ball of earth. It's a staff only Thera could use. Since it's basically useless unless someone has enough raw power to deal with it, you're lucky to get mid-common. Man, that's way too disappointing. And that's why I said not to worry about it. You're too caught up in some arbitrary evaluation. What really matters is if the item you've made does the job the client needs. You're right, you're right. Ben conceded before turning to Thera. Hey, I'm going to try and spend the rest of the day making some more staves with my new enchantment, so hopefully we can have better luck tomorrow. Meet up just after sunrise as usual? Sure. Okay, sounds good, I'll see you then. Also Falk, thanks for the advice, I'll try not to let the ratings get to me. Of course brat. If I'm still here when you finish the next one, come and grab me, I wouldn't mind giving it a look. Sounds good. With that he turned away from them both and got back to it. The next ones would be quicker, at least since he still had some material prepped from his last batch. It was time to get to work. What is this? Thera asked as soon as she entered the shop in the morning. Ben was already awake this time, just putting the finishing touches on what looked like the sort of backpack one would usually use to carry wooden logs. It was basically just 2 metal bars in an L shape attached together with a few leather straps to wear it, and it was filled with maybe a dozen staves. She turned to Falk for an explanation, but he was in the corner staring on with a look of confusion and concern himself, not believing what he was seeing. What's the matter, Thera? Ben asked in his own confusion. How did you make all of these in one night? And you had time to make a carrier too? Yeah, I accidentally forgot to sleep, I'll just have to do it when we're done today. Anyway, making them all wasn't too hard. You saw yesterday, right? The technique I was using let me stretch out the metals to make 2 when it was 5 layers, but when I tried to make a 7-layer one after leveling up it became 3, and then I felt like I could push myself a bit more after that, so I tried for 9 layers as well and was also able to split it into 3. I think I could still get a few more layers of resistance if I try, but I'm pretty sure after this I would need to raise my enchanting again to make it worthwhile, like sure it would make a smoother gradient, but there isn't much difference if it starts at the same level, you know? So instead I made another 9-layer one with different materials. He was smiling the entire time he was talking, not giving the impression he hadn't gotten any sleep at all, but Thera didn't know how to react. In less than 24 hours he had made 11 staves. Certainly it wouldn't be a big deal for someone like Falk, but he had only managed 3 or for the first 2 days he'd started this. Boy, are you sure you're good to go out? It wouldn't do you any good to pass out. Falk asked, a little worried. Nah, I'm all good. I've pulled plenty of all-nighters before and we're just going to the training grounds. When we're done I'll get some sleep. Plus if we can get 3 shots out of any of them then not only can we go hunting tomorrow, but I can devote only a day or 2 a week to making them and have plenty of time for other things. It's a win-win. Huh, alright, just don't go getting yourself killed then. Thera, sorry, but if he starts seeming a bit tired come back early, alright. Will do, uncle, don't worry. We'll be off then. I'll take a nap here when we're done and then get back to work, Ben said while leaving the shop. They could both hear Falk yelling after him. Just go home. Has your enchanting gotten that much better? You've been staring at that rock forever. The moment they got out of town, but before they reached the training grounds, Ben picked up a rock about twice the size of his fist to start his regular enchanting practice, but he had been fiddling with it the entire time without stopping to pick up a new one. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not actually just adding enchantments until it breaks this time. Since my level went up I have a lot more options available. So what are you doing then? Since my level went up, instead of just applying my enchantment evenly across the entire thing I can focus it into specific sections now. From what I read this usually actually works worse in a lot of cases because it can result in instability and weakness in poor quality materials or just erases the enchantment from better quality ones, but it lets me do things like this. Saying this he held up his rock, and instead of breaking the entire thing he only scraped away a bit of the material with his fingers. So you don't break the entire thing now? Is that all? I don't break the entire thing and now the rest of the material keeps its structure. He rapped his knuckles against the rest of it before continuing. And now I can use my crafting at the same time to make the material a bit easier to manipulate so those sections will break faster. Okay, that's neat and all. But why? Well, it was mostly just curiosity to see if I could, but since it looks like I figured this would be a good way to train both skills at once. Plus I feel like sculpting something and this is an easy and cheap way to go about it. Ben was glad she started a bit of conversation. It seemed like the secret to getting her to talk was to spark her curiosity a bit so maybe he could finish sculpting something interesting by the time they were heading back, when she asked him another question. Why do you practice so much? What do you mean? I think I'm doing this a pretty normal amount? You're missing sleep and seem to use any spare moment to practice some more. If this is what's normal for you then I don't think many others do quite this much. Well, I mean, it's fun? Like aside from reading there really isn't much else to do, and leveling up just feels fulfilling I guess? Don't you like practicing magic? I don't know. Really? Then why do you do this? There has to be easier things you could do if you don't enjoy it. The world's going to be at war in a couple years. Growing up my father would often talk about the death of his world and I just don't want the same thing to happen here without fighting. I guess that makes sense, we're all in this together. Even if the average person was still reasonably comfortable and enjoying their day-to-day life, the fact that could all come tumbling down in a little less than 3 years hung in the backs of most people's minds. It made sense to try and prepare a bit while you still could. Though something she said bothered him a little. Wait though, your father remembers his world ending? I thought the last group of refugees was a few hundred years ago. Thera was instantly beating herself up. Somehow she got caught up in the flow of things and started talking about her family without meaning to and ended up saying something without thinking. Well, there are plenty of long-lived races around, she responded, desperately trying to brush off her careless remark. Ben was able to see she wanted to drop the topic so he let it go. Fair enough. He told her. I actually have an elf friend. She won't tell me her age though, she'd usually just say you shouldn't tease an old woman when I would try to probe her. Why, what would you do? Usually tease her. She wasn't really sure what she was expecting but let out a groan anyway. Alright, enough of that. It looks like we're here. She was about to ask what he was talking about when a group of 3 called out to them. Hey man, if you don't want to get yourself killed you should find a real adventurer to party with. Ben turned to look at who was talking and saw the speaker seemed to be a 4-armed warrior, carrying 2 shields in his upper hands and 2 spears in his lower ones. Following behind him were a horned woman with forest green skin that looked like she was carrying some tools for a healer and a woman with the lower half of a snake that seemed to be Naga whose role wasn't readily apparent. He was about to ask what they wanted when Thera spoke up. "Mind your own business and leave us alone, Sko." The man, apparently Sko, turned to her. "Thera, since it doesn't look like anyone else warned him, someone needs to step in. You have no skill as an adventurer, you're just going to get this poor guy killed. I haven't gotten any teams I've been with injured yet, so just back off. PFF, that's just luck. When you were with us we couldn't rely on you for any support. Your magic is basically useless, not to mention your curse dash." "Shut up," she screamed, cutting him off. "I'm just trying to practice here, so mind your own business and leave me alone." "Thera, it's nothing personal," the horned green girl cut in. "You just need to find a job more suited to you. Adventuring isn't for everyone." "Yeah," said the Naga. "It's for your own safety too. We already heard about your new partner getting injured and having to walk himself back to the gate. How are you going to feel if he dies because of you?" Thera was shaking with emotion at this point and didn't know what to say, which is when Ben stepped between them and cut in. "Hold on, I got injured because of my own carelessness. If Thera hadn't stepped in to help it could have been a lot worse. Besides that, I'm enjoying working with her and don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Now if you'll excuse us." He quickly grabbed his things and gestured for Thera to come with him. As they walked away he heard one of them say, "Looks like the guy's already cursed." They walked in silence for a minute until they were far enough away from the training grounds before Ben turned to her. "Are you okay?" Even if they weren't close and she didn't want to be anything more than a temporary team, he didn't want to think about her being bullied by other adventurers. He really did believe she was a nice enough girl, if not a bit distant with people. She was still trembling a little in anger, but she was doing her best to pull herself together. "I'm all right. Thank you. HM? I didn't do anything, don't worry about it. I mean, for sticking up for me. I appreciate it." "Oh, well, I mean, we're a team right now, it's the least I can do," he told her with a smile. They walked in silence for a bit longer before she spoke up again. "Are you not going to ask about it?" What?" He was genuinely confused. "Being cursed by me. There's those sorts of rumors going around." "What's that?" "I don't care about any rumors. We may not know each other well, but I trust Falk and he wouldn't have asked me to work with you if he didn't think I could manage. But if we're working together for a while it may negatively affect people's opinion of you. At the very least it's well known with the adventurers in town." "Bah, what do I care if some adventurers think I'm being cursed? The whole world already decided I'm useless, so this much is nothing." She was about to ask him what he meant by that, but he spoke up again before she could get any words in. "Anyway, I have an idea for how we're going to get some hunting done tomorrow. I'll just need to gather a couple supplies and check the guild archives quickly. Meet up tomorrow morning?" "Alright, sure. Cool, see you then." He turned around and was about to run off when he remembered one last thing and turned back to her. "Here, catch." She grabbed what he tossed to her and almost fumbled it before she was able to give it a proper look. When she did, she saw the stone carving he had been working on, of a small cloaked figure holding a staff above her head. "Hope you don't mind, I accidentally ended up using you as a reference while you were practicing. If you don't want it, feel free to throw it out. See you tomorrow then." With his business done he ran off. Alright, let's see how this goes. He was feeling enthusiastic, with how promising the 3-layered enchantment was. Surely one of these would work, and he was quick to hand over one of each staff he made. "Hey, I was thinking this for a while. But did we really need to bring all of them? Plenty are just duplicates of themselves, aren't they?" Thera asked as she looked on at the pile he still had in hand. "It doesn't hurt. They're here just in case I want to see you use one again or try something different." "Alright then, let's get this over with." She was still uncomfortable to be in an area with a few other people around practicing in the morning and was a little jealous of how calm Ben seemed about it, still working on shaping his stone while seemingly having his full attention on her. The 5-layer and 7-layer staves worked a bit better than the 3-layered one, but were still ultimately disappointing. After a successful first shot they tried for a second and the 5-layer was able to at least create a ball of earth, while the 7-layer one being able to throw it a few meters, but not enough to really consider it a second shot. All that was left were the 2 different 9 layers. Thera started to activate her magic, letting it flow through her into her staff, and felt the same unfamiliar resistance she had experienced with all of his latest works, before firing her first earth bullet. As was expected, the spell shot fine. At least Ben had gotten the hang of making staves she could get a single use out of. What came next was what would matter. The staff itself still appeared fine, no visible cracks or damage was present, and she felt Ben's eyes glued to her, watching her every movement as she prepared to try a second spell. She concentrated, taking more care than she normally would to try and get it to work, and with a swing of her arm fired it. As Ben watched, he saw it was almost perfect. Almost. It fell a little short of the last one still, but it was close enough that it could be called a success. But despite it all, he wasn't happy. "What's wrong?" Thera asked when she saw the unhappy look plastered on his face. "I thought that last one went pretty well. It was at least far better than most times she tried a staff that wasn't made by her uncle but instead a random shop. No, this is great, it's a real improvement and all. I was just hoping that 3 times the layers would work out to 3 times the spells, but of course that wouldn't be the case. All I did was create a smoother gradient for your magic to work through. Maybe I could make it work by making a bigger staff, but at that point it wouldn't be usable. So in that case, should I go back to the drawing board? But then who knows how long it will be before I can make something that can handle 3 shots." She was beginning to pick up on the fact that he would talk a lot when trying to work out a problem. "But isn't this okay? If you're making 3 staves at a time like this, that's basically the same as firing 6 spells." "Yeah, but the waste is actually insane. Honestly speaking, I have no clue how Falk can afford this. The material costs can't be insignificant." "Oh, didn't you know? Uncle has a few patents to his name as well as a few wealthy clients. He's not rich, but at the same time money isn't really going to be an issue for him." "Wait, really?" Ben asked in surprise. "Well, I guess that's fine if my failures aren't going to leave him in the poorhouse. Is that what he's working on now then?" Ben hadn't bothered to ask Falk about what would be keeping him so busy for the next few months, but a big order from a wealthy client would make sense. Thera only shrugged though. "Probably? He takes his confidentiality pretty seriously, so he won't talk about it though. So with this, do you feel ready to try another hunt tomorrow?" Ben gave it some thought. It was true that they should be fine if they had 3 of the 9-layer staves, but they should still be cautious. Plus, after seeing her use her magic these last few days, he wasn't actually sure Thera could really use her spells in combat. He knew she had been adventuring before, but he wasn't sure about how well it went for her. Still, if he wanted to know, he had better at least ask. "Hey, when you were hunting solo, how often would you fail a quest?" "Guh, where did that come from?" "I was just thinking about hunting. With me there you'll still be basically hunting by yourself since I can't fulfill any roles like fighter or tank, and it seems like your magic takes at least a few seconds to activate." She fidgeted about uncomfortably before answering. "I guess I would get about 1 or 2 successful quests a week." At this point it was about what Ben had been expecting, so the comment didn't really faze him. Actually, he had an idea for just what they could do about it. "Alright, if you're willing to try something a little different, I think we can make hunting work." Ben was initially surprised, but thought back to what Myriad said when he got the skill and tried to use it on him. Maybe in the same way that he was weaker than a god, an insect was weak enough that it couldn't properly handle his feelings, killing it? If that was the case, then he would at least be able to get a bit of practice from using it on bugs, but would that really be enough to improve his skill level? It was at least better than nothing. He lifted his hand to swat away the tiny corpse when the sense of calm he was feeling vanished as well, causing him to pause again. He hadn't noticed it wasn't his own emotion he was feeling, but the sudden loss made it clear it came from the connection breaking, much in the same way it felt when Falk pulled away after he first tested the skill. The only problem was he didn't know what he had connected to. He looked around and felt his body, wondering if perhaps a bigger bug had landed on him but taken longer to die or fly away, but if that was the case, wouldn't he have felt some sort of distress from it? He was at a loss until it occurred to him. He had been touching the tree. He had to test it out again. Placing his hand on its trunk, he once again activated his connection and experienced a feeling of calm wash over him. As that happened, his excitement spiked, and after a minute he felt the tree gently respond to it. It was slow, but it felt as if its mood was picking up from neutral to something else he couldn't quite identify. The discovery left him elated. This was it. This was how he could train his connect skill without needing another person to help him. Thinking about it, he could always get a pet as well, but a plant would be so much less effort, not to mention the lack of guilt of using the skill in case it has any negative effects on it. He still wasn't sure it would have any real practical use, but it would be a shame not to level it a bit and see. At the very least it seemed to make a decent bug killer. He proceeded to spend the next half hour using his skill to get acquainted with the tree. It wasn't really a conversation, just an exchange of feelings, but it was still interesting to probe at it with his emotions and see how it would respond. He tried to send thoughts to it directly, but at least at the moment that seemed impossible. In that time he got the impression that even though the tree was alive and able to experience some external stimulus, its feelings and range of emotions were significantly more limited than he would expect an animal to be, but there was still so much to figure out. It was as he was experimenting that Thera whispered at him to grab his attention. "Hey, they're here." A small group of squirrels were approaching the cooking meat. They were cautious at first, but once they saw it was unattended they raced towards it, with a few of the more cautious ones that were hiding farther back running to catch up. Soon enough there were around a dozen in the hole, each fighting the others for some of the scraps. It was time to finish it. "All right, Thera, you got this." She gave him a nod and grabbed her staff, carefully activating her magic and directing it at the pile of earth, trying to make it do just one thing: shift back into the hole. It was a task she normally wouldn't have bothered with, but it was also significantly easier on her than trying to make a proper earth bullet. The dirt quickly slid across the ground, filling the hole with all of the squirrels in it. For good measure she used a bit more mana to press down into the earth, making sure nothing would crawl out and resulting in her staff breaking into fragments. "That was easier than I expected," she said when she was done and had dusted off her hands. "But can my magic actually get better like this? Easy is good, why work your butt off for one kill when you can score a bunch? As for your magic, who knows? But from my perspective this doesn't seem much different from when you shoot an earth bullet, it's all just moving earth around, the only thing that's changed is the intent. Anyway, let's give it another 15 or 20 minutes for the smell to disappear, then can you dig out the hole again?" "Sure, are we hunting more?" "No, I didn't bring enough meat for that, this was really more of a proof of concept. My goal is all those buried materials we got, 20 squirrel corpses. Even if they were small, with the amount he had he would be able to make plenty of weapons boosted with their fire affinity from the bones and at least some fire-resistant pouches from the skins. Plus now that he had a way to quickly make Thera a few adequate staves he would have a lot more time for his own training." Things were looking bright. "Ben, don't say anything and don't panic," Myriad suddenly said as they were chatting while he walked back to his home. "It looks like you're being followed." He suppressed his first instinct to look around him and continued on his way, though changing course so he wouldn't end up at his home. "What do you mean I'm being followed? Am I about to be mugged?" He wasn't on the main street, but he was close by, and it seemed like it would be a pretty bold thing to do in the middle of the day. "I'm not sure, as soon as you left the shop a cloaked figure started to tail you. Are we sure this isn't just Thera?" He still had no clue what she looked like without it. "Fairly sure, it's a different cloak and they're taller too. I mean I guess she could have changed and put on some heels. Of course if it is her she must be pissed at you right now. Why? Whoever it is definitely holding a knife. Jesus, Myriad, could you lead with that next time?" The urge to look around or just run became even greater, but he was still trying to appear casual. "What should I do then?" "Just keep walking for now. They're keeping a steady distance from you, but if they start trying to catch up I'll let you know to run, just get to the main street." Great. The day had started off so good and now he had to avoid getting stabbed. He walked a bit down the street before taking a turn that would get him towards the main road where there would be more foot traffic, hopefully enough to deter his pursuer, when Myriad spoke up again. "Run." He could hear the sound of footsteps slapping against the road behind him, but he didn't waste the second it would take to turn around. He immediately followed his god's orders and ran like his life depended on it. His agility attribute was low but he pushed it for all it was worth, and felt his heart hammering in his chest, the pounding in his ears making it so he couldn't hear any noise around him. He was entirely dependent on any warning Myriad could give him. It was only a few minutes of effort, but his sprint got him to the main street. "It looks like he stopped following you. You must have looked like an easy target." "Why?" he thought as he panted for air, drawing looks from the people around him. "I'm literally just carrying a plant and some staves." He was still carrying the ones he made for Thera, since she always had the one Falk made in case of emergency. There was no point in lugging around a bunch of inferior products after all. Maybe that's all it was? Staves aren't cheap, you know, and as long as they're in good shape the resale value isn't bad. Anyone seeing the ones you've made would have no way to know they make earth magic all but unusable. "Alright, don't carry a bunch of valuables." Noted. With that bit of excitement out of the way he found the nearest town guard and gave them a statement, including the description he got from Myriad. They were frank that there wasn't much they could do, but they would keep their eyes out for any similar cases and then offered to escort him to wherever he needed to be, so he got them to walk him back to Fox's shop. Once he got there he explained what just happened to his teacher. "Well, it's good you're alright, boy, but maybe you should learn some offensive skills." It isn't great that you could be attacked in the middle of the day and have no way to protect yourself, especially if you're going to be doing some hunting anyway, he told his student with some worry. It was just some bad luck. I guess I look like an easy mark. Besides, you know I'm not suited to combat skills. True enough. Well, just make sure the shop's locked while you're practicing at night. Would hate to find your corpse when I open in the morning. And I'd hate to be a corpse. Don't worry, Fock, I always lock up. Besides, what are the chances of this happening again? Thankfully, over the next month, there were no repeats of the same event. Ben continued to split his time between practicing his skills and hunting with Thera, and after dismantling enough corpses he even raised that skills level up to 1, making him slightly more efficient. He was still practicing making different equipment at the shop and working on his general techniques and would still spend a bit of time trying to figure out how to improve the quality of Thera's staves, but aside from some small improvements here and there he still couldn't make it to the coveted 3 spells. He was determined not to give up, but that didn't mean he could neglect learning other things, some of which led into their hunting activities. Alright, Thera, take the shot. This still feels wrong. Can't we hunt like regular people sometimes? I would rather not get killed trying to fight fair with a monster. You're the one who was worried about if you could improve your magic just using pit traps, so I spent weeks experimenting and testing to make this. We can debate the ethics of it after you fire your spell. She let out a sigh knowing there was not going to be any arguing with him. For the last couple weeks he had been experimenting and testing what he was calling a bear trap just so she would be able to practice her offensive spells, and now they had a blood elk caught in it, one of its legs trapped in the tool's metal jaws as it desperately tried to pull itself free, a small aura of darkness wrapping around its form as it tried to hide from any other predators. Namely them. She knew the creature could and would kill them if it had the chance, so she put her hesitation aside and raised her staff, aimed her spell, and left a mangled mess where the body landed. Well, looks like I'm not getting any materials from that, Ben said, looking at the crushed pile of meat and bone, a leg still caught in the trap. Sorry, she knew he used what they caught as materials. Wasting something that big just so she could practice her magic was admittedly a bit selfish of her, though Ben didn't actually mind. Don't worry about it. The sooner we raise your level the sooner you can have better control of your magic. I've still got a ton of other materials to use. He especially had more Skrull bones than he knew what to do with from their first few hunts together, as well as plenty of materials from some harder creatures. Once Thera got used to his way of doing things, it wasn't long before they started taking on rank 6 creatures. They didn't always succeed, sometimes they would escape whatever trap they set up or notice them and run away, but when that did happen Thera got the chance to try and get it with one of her spells, so it still served as practice at least. So do you have anything going on for the rest of the day? He asked her. Just helping a bit at the clinic. Cool, in that case want to stop by the shop a bit beforehand? I was hoping to get your opinion on a few products I've made recently. Can't my uncle help you? I already heard his take, I just wanted to get a second opinion before I try and sell some stuff at the market. Alright then, sure, she decided after a moment's hesitation. If it won't take too long I don't mind. So what sort of weapon did you make then? She asked as they got to the shop. Not a weapon, just some toys. Why would you make toys? She asked in confusion. This is a weapons shop. Fock overheard their conversation and chimed in. It's good to try some different sorts of things when you're starting out, Thera. Just 'cause I mostly make weapons doesn't mean the boy will when he starts on his own. Sides that, I make other things too. Sonia just got a new pen not too long ago. Okay uncle, but I still don't see the point. If he's selling at the market, wouldn't it be better to make weapons like usual? Surely the price would be better than anything he could get on toys. The point, Ben started, is just to try making something different is all. Besides, if someone wanted to buy a weapon they could come here literally any time. For the most part the things I've made are pretty simple and easy, so if anyone wants to come order one it wouldn't be much of a strain on us. Give me a second, I'll grab them. He ran to the back and pulled out a box of things, placing them on the table one by one to show off. He had made 6 types of items, 3 of which she recognized. I'm familiar with the kite, spinning top, and lute, but what are the other 3? The remaining items looked like a plate made from wood and leather, a flattened ball with a slit running through it, and a strange cross with a ball attached with a string. A lute, huh? I'd probably call it a children's guitar, or maybe ukulele, but I guess lute works. Anyway, as for the other 3, there's a frisbee, a yo-yo, and a kendama. I want you to realize that doesn't actually tell me anything. Sorry, let's start with the frisbee. Do you have a minute, Fock? I can spare a couple lad, need a hand demonstrating? Yep, catch, he said, throwing it towards his teacher, who gracefully caught it from the air before throwing it back to Ben. "So you just play catch with it? Like a ball?" "Well, yeah, I guess if you put it that way, that's all there is to it." It was a good way to use up the leftover Skrell leathers, since it's just a light wooden frame wrapped up to be easier on the hands. But do you think it's too simple? "No, it seems fine. It does look graceful flying through the air like that, so I think it will sell if it's cheap." "What about the other two?" "Alright, let's go with the kendama next. So this is sort of a catching balancing toy, I guess. The point is to hold the base and try to land the ball on one of the sides or the spike at top." He tried a couple times to demonstrate but failed to successfully land any of them. "If you can't even do it to demonstrate, how can you expect anyone to want to buy it?" she asked while watching his failed attempts. "Told you," Falk yelled as he worked. Okay, you guys are right. Glad I only made a couple of them instead of wasting a ton of time. In that case, the last is the yo-yo. Can you at least use this one? I'm actually pretty good with this one. An old friend taught me how years ago." His smile took on a sad note for a moment before he went back to a more animated expression, and he pulled out a bit of string that was hidden in the slit running along its circumference. He put the loop around his middle finger and threw it down, only for it to smoothly return, traveling back up the string and into his hand. After doing that a couple times, he changed to throwing it forwards, then spun it in a loop around his hand as well. It actually ended up being a bit fun to watch. "Alright, that one actually has some pretty good potential, I think, but is it hard to use?" she asked after seeing his display. "It takes some practice to get it right, but it's not that hard. Want to give it a try?" "Sure." "Cool, so all you're doing at first is repeating what I did. Slip it around your middle finger, raise your arm up like you're flexing, and bring it down. While it's at the bottom, just gently jerk your hand up and it should return to you." She did as she was told and brought it down before jerking her hand, only for it to just sit sadly at the bottom of the string. "That's alright, like I said, it takes a little practice, just wind it back up and try again." She tried 2 more times and started feeling discouraged, wondering how much practice it would take, but on her 4th try she had her success. "I did it." She rejoiced at her success, only to immediately be embarrassed at the enthusiasm she showed. If her face wasn't covered by her cloak, she would be clearly blushing for them to see. Luckily, Ben didn't seem to mind the outburst and was happy to cheer her on. "Great work. It took me a lot longer to get it right when I was first learning. See, Falk, it doesn't take forever to master," he called out to his teacher. "Bah, Thera's just talented. You can't hold the average man to her standard. Ignore him, he's just sore that he couldn't get the hang of it after 20 minutes of trying. Want to try throwing it forward?" She was already playing with it some more, so why not try her on something a little more advanced? "Sure, I guess I can see the appeal of this." She was having a fair bit of fun actually. It had been a long time since she had just stopped to play around, and it was a good change of pace from the usual training, hunting, and helping her aunt. Ben explained what to do and she started trying again, getting lost in the task before succeeding in a few minutes. She repeated that throw and the new one a few times, making sure she got the proper feel for it before stopping to return it to him. "You can keep that one if you want, I have a bunch." He had made plenty since they were easy enough and the material cost was low. Even selling them cheap, he could make a reasonable amount from the base cost, so he didn't mind giving one away, though Thera seemed to hesitate. I don't know." "It's fine, Thera." "He isn't thinking anything," Falk yelled out. "Well, if you're sure, then I'll accept, thank you." "No worries. So are you good to push hunting back to the afternoon tomorrow?" "I don't know how long it will take to sell this all, but if it takes too long I'll just pack up." "Sure, that's no problem. Your toys seem good, I'm sure they'll sell well." "Well, thanks, I'm going to go back to making more then. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night." Ben walked to the back of the shop where his work area was set up, and Thera was about to leave when Falk called out to her. "Before you go, Thera, mind giving me a moment?" "Sure, what can I do for you, Uncle?" "I just wanted to ask, has the boy seemed okay to you recently?" "No, stranger than usual, I think." "Why?" "I'm pretty sure he's been sleeping less, and I'm not sure if you've noticed, but his smile's been slipping more than usual, like he's struggling with something." "How could he be sleeping less? Doesn't he already spend most of each night practicing here?" "I guess I have noticed he tends to hide his negative feelings a bit though. It would happen a lot when he started talking about people he knew, like whatever friend taught him to yo-yo, but she didn't think too much on it. Sometimes people would have falling outs." She didn't feel like prying. "Well, I'm a little worried anyway. By the end of the week I'll have to leave the city for a little while to see a client. Do you think you could keep an eye on him while I'm gone? Maybe go with him to the market tomorrow and try and ask him about whatever's on his mind?" "Uncle, you know I don't like getting too close to people." "Really? It seems like you two are getting along well though. He even gave you one of those yo things. On that topic, are you sure he's okay, uncle? This isn't the first time he's given me something either. What? What else has he given you? A little statue he made while he was training his enchanting and crafting. Oh, those, the ones he makes from random stones he picks up? That's fine then, he leaves them everywhere. It's actually a pretty clever way to practice. I don't think I know anyone who uses the destructive properties of enchantment like that. Actually, I should tell him to take a bunch to try and sell too. They're starting to pile up in the back a bit. But I got off topic. He's fine, you don't have anything to worry about. Maybe if you spoke to him openly he could ease your mind. She was not at all fond of that idea. Well, either way, you've got your cloak, and like I've said before, his resistances are high. Trust me, you'll both be fine. So would you do this as a favor for me? Alright then, uncle, I guess I can do it for you. There's a good girl. Now tell your aunt I said hello. He'll be setting up in the morning, so come early, okay? Alright, I'll be here tomorrow. After waking up, Thera wiped herself down with a warmed bucket of water before getting dressed, donning her cloak, and preparing to start her day. Having made her promise with Fox, she headed over to the shop and prepared to spend the morning with Ben at the market as he tried to sell his wares. Honestly, she was a little excited for it. It wasn't often that she would actually go to those sorts of things since there tended to be more people around than she could deal with, but the few times she had been to one in her homeland she had fun seeing all that was available. Of course, as a local market it would be smaller, with people selling their foods and handicrafts and whatnot, but it would still be a new experience. She also didn't want to admit it, but she was beginning to enjoy the company that Ben provided. Having worked together for a month now, it was the longest she had ever lasted in a party. Usually once other members saw how she struggled with her magic or heard the rumors about her, they would be quick to drop her, leaving her to adventure alone even if that was more dangerous. But Ben had stuck it out. Sure, he had an agreement with her uncle, but for the most part he seemed to be enjoying himself, and it was nice to have the company. She was still a little worried that he was being affected by her presence. Even if it was nice, just receiving 2 small gifts was enough to put her on edge. But if Falk insisted he was fine, then she would believe him for now. But uncle should be done with his project in another month or 2, so I guess he'll go back to being the one to make me staves. I guess that means we'll stop working together. Although he also said I need to adventure with his apprentice until I can find a new party to join. Gods know I'm not going to have any luck with that in this town. So maybe they would be working together for a while longer still. As these thoughts floated around her head, she entered the shop and found Ben, sweeping the floor with a dead look in his eyes. Ben? Are you okay? She didn't know why she asked. He clearly wasn't at the moment, but she was caught off guard and didn't know what else to lead with. Hearing her voice, he jumped up and threw on a smile, as if he were going to greet a customer instead of talking with someone he'd been working with for a while. Thera, good morning. Sorry, I was lost in thought and wasn't expecting you here so early. Didn't we have plans to meet up afternoon? Uncle Falk asked me to come help out with your table at the market, so I came early. Are you alright? Oh yeah, I'm good. I just didn't really sleep last night, so I ended up getting too focused on my cleaning, but I would love to have the help. I actually just finished loading a cart. If you want to come set up with me. I was told there would be plenty of chairs there, so I don't think we need to grab any. Alright, sure. It looked like her uncle was onto something, but she was no good with these sorts of things. She would just have to try and find a way to broach the subject as the day went on. With him already packed and ready to go, they headed out to the town square where the event was being held and found the table he had been assigned and started piling his items on top of it. About a dozen yo-yos, 30 or 40 frisbees, 3 small lutes and a bucket of tops were placed on top of the table, with the kites being stored underneath to save on space. Once that was done, he started piling up the sculptures he had been making in his spare time. There must have been around 50 of them, all around the size of a hand, with the details more well-defined than what he had given her after his first attempt. You've gotten better at this, she expressed after picking one up and giving it a look. Though I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. Thanks, but my actual technique has only improved a little. I've just cleaned up the ones you see with a file and a small chisel to get some of the details right. As for that, his expression slipped again. It's an elephant. I guess there aren't any around here. She looked at the little sculpture to examine it. While there were similarities to other creatures, it definitely didn't look like anything she was familiar with, having a round body, thick legs, large thin ears, and one of the most unusual noses she'd ever seen. How big are these supposed to be? Is it like a pet? Oh man, I can only say probably not. I'm sure there's probably some eccentric out there that would keep them, but they're way bigger than I am. I can't imagine how hard it would be to look after one. Are all of these creatures from your homeland? While plenty resembled animals she was familiar with, there were also a few that were foreign to her. Some are just from stories. She saw the sad look come to his eye again and decided not to put it off any longer. She picked up one of the lutes and started plucking out a tune from her home as she lost herself in her own thoughts. Her life was always something she tried to keep private, but her uncle told her to try opening up and she trusted him, she would at least think about it.